Open up the meeting. I want to welcome everybody to the May 19th Planning Commission meeting. Before we start, I've been requested to make sure that all the commissioners speak in their mics and not sit back and keep talking because it's not getting recorded. So I told them I'd do that every 15, 20 minutes if I have to, but I hope I don't. Okay, first item, let's hear the announcements.
Chairman, can we go ahead and go through the minutes and other stuff while we're waiting for the public to answer back to that?
Okay,
Roll call.
let's do roll call.
We've actually got it printed out, so I can just read it, if that works. All right. Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and the Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing, and that on that item, and plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion on that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there is any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please know that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking but wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing all views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions that have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearing on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of the decision of the BZA is to the District Court.
Great job.
Thank you, Philip. Next item, let's do roll call.
Certainly. Good afternoon. Bill Johnson.
Present.
Fox. Fox.
He's not here.
McKay.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Jewell. Jewell.
He's gone.
Vincent. Lick.
Here.
Nix. Here. Foster.
Here.
Warren.
Here.
Joe Johnson.
Here.
Miles.
Present.
Hartman.
Here.
Cunningham.
Here.
Williams Bay. Williams Bay. Absent. So I show 11 present and 3 absent.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next item has to do with approval of the prior MAPC meeting minutes of May 5th. we show that everybody was present. So look for a motion to approve.
I ask one question? There was a correction that needed to be made to the motion on page 29. Is that correction done?
Yes, it may not be in your packet, but we got the email with your correction and it will be made.
So I would like to move that we approve the minutes as corrected.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion approved by Ms. Foster, second by Ms. Miles. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Carries 11-0. Okay, I'm going to go through the agenda and see which items we can take on consent and which items we need to hear today. Subdivision items 2021-00052, final plat of Ballman Addition. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Any of the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. The next one, subdivision 2022-00019. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the council chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? Hearing none, we'll take that on consent.
Move for exception of 2122. Second.
Got a motion by Mr. McKay to approve items 2.1 and 2.2. Second by Mr. Green. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Carries 11-0. Public hearing items of vacation case 2021-00048. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the chamber here want to hear this case? Anybody virtual? Take that on consent. 3.2 vacation case 2022-00008. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Any commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the chamber want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? Hearing none, take that consent. Item 3.3, vacation case 2022-00009. This has been withdrawn, so we will not take action on that case. Next one's 3.4, vacation case 2022-00010. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody here in the chamber want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? We'll take that on consent. Next one's 3.5, vacation case 2022-00011. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual? Do they want to hear the case? Anybody here in the chamber want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? We'll take that on consent. I look for a motion.
For items 3.1, 3.2, 3.4, and 3.5.
Second.
Is that you, Mr. Hartman?
Yes.
Motion by Mr. Hartman to approve 3.1, 3.2, 3.4, and 3.5. Second by Mr. Flick. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the next item is a public hearing, and we will, huh? Anybody opposed to the motion? 11-0. Item 4.1, 2022-00004, we will hear that case because there's some additional information. Come back from the Board of Commissioners. Next one is 2022-00007. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the chamber here want to hear that case? Anybody virtual want to hear that case? Take that on consent. The next item we need to hear, correct, Philip?
That is correct because it has a denial recommendation from staff.
Okay, the next one's 4.4. CUP 2022-00016. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Any of the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the chamber here want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? We can take that on consent. CUP 2022-00018. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual? Do they want to hear the case? Anybody in the chambers here want to hear this case? Anybody virtual? We'll take that on consent. 4.6, PUD 2022-00009. Philip, did we need to hear this case?
If it looks like it's going to be a consent item, we may want to talk with the agent to see if they're in agreement with staff recommendation.
So we see if anybody wants to hear it, or, okay. Does any of the commissioners want to hear this case?
Yes.
Huh? Yes. Okay, we're going to hear that. The next one's 4.7, conditional use 2022-00025, CUP 2022-0017. Anybody on the planning commission want to hear this case? Anybody virtual on the commission want to hear this case? Huh?
I want to hear this. This is the one at 22nd.
Okay.
One. 4.7.
Next one's zoning case 2022-00026. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Any of the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the chamber here want to hear that case?
Yes.
Okay, we'll hear that case. Next one's zoning 2022-00015. That has been deferred indefinitely. Also, case 2022-00016 will be deferred indefinitely, as well as zoning 2022-00017. We will need a motion to accept that. Okay,
Motion to approve 4.2, 4.4, and 4.5.
Second.
okay, who made the motion?
Right here.
Josh.
Mr. Blick, second by Ms. Foster.
Yes.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, the first item is going to be conditional 2022-000 or 00004. And just so everybody knows that we've heard this case before. And basically, we should just take into consideration additional information we got. I'm not for going back and reviewing everything that we talked about before. And I think with that said, I think the county counselor wants to make a comment about it.
Afternoon, Planning Commissioners. Justin Wagoner, Assistant County Counselor. Just a couple different things I'd mention. First, as has been noted, this case is referred back to you from the Board of County Commissioners. When the KSA 12-757 says that when it's returned, the governing body returns a case back, the Planning Commission, after considering the case, may resubmit its original recommendation, giving the reasons therefor, or you can submit a new and amended recommendation. Philip's going to talk through why the Board of County Commissioners sent this back. Something else to note is that statute, it does not really give you the option to defer from this meeting to a future meeting. It says that you're supposed to come back with a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. If you don't make a recommendation today, for example, if you tried to defer it for your next meeting, then it's actually considered as though you just resubmitted your recommendation from back in March. So I would suggest, and I think planning staff would suggest, that you come up with a recommendation today. It can certainly be the same recommendation. It can be something different entirely as well. Also, for your hearing itself, as the chairman was noting, I think you can limit the comments to the new item for what the Board of County Commissioners referred this back to, or responses to new information that may be submitted by the applicant or by planning staff. The bylaws, as was noted during the public introduction and comments, specify how much time for an actual public hearing is set by statute. Today is not necessarily the official public hearing that's required to happen, but is instead the rehearing of the case. Our bylaws for the Planning Commission don't specify the time limits, so you could do the 10 minutes for the applicant, 3 minutes for any of the other parties who wish to comment. If you would like, you could modify that as well. I think our history has been that the chair may suggest a modified time, and the Planning Commission could adopt that, but I think that's really at the will of the Planning Commission as to how you may wish to handle that. I'd be happy to stand for any questions you have on that.
Any questions of council?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Jeff.
Okay, good afternoon. Philip Zievenbergen
Hey,
with
Philip,
planning
I'm sorry.
staff. Oh, I'm sorry?
I called you the wrong name. Sorry, Philip.
That's all right. I've been called worst. I'm the third child. I got called everybody's name. So, even the cat. Anyway, Philip Zievenbergen, planning staff, for the record. As Justin mentioned, this has been referred back to the Planning Commission by the Board of County Commissioners. Just a little bit of a recap on what we're talking about here, and then I'll dive into some of the new information for your consideration this afternoon. As a reminder, this case is a conditional use case looking to approve two different things. Number one is a recreational vehicle campground. This is located on the north and east portion of the site. That's kind of northeast of the railroad tracks. This is located at 295th West and K96. The major topic of conversation has been the second one, which is for a shooting range that's on the south and western portion of the property, southwest of the railroad track. The property is zoned rural residential. Both of these uses are permitted within rural residential by conditional use. As a reminder, on March 17th, you guys considered this the first time, and you had an approval recommendation of 8-2, subject to staff recommendation, in addition to a requirement that limited the hours of operation from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes prior to sunset. That was the recommendation that was sent to the Board of County Commissioners. There were several people who spoke in opposition to this case at that meeting. Following the Planning Commission meeting, there was a 2-week protest period for which a 91.96% of the land area within 1,000 feet of this property protested the case, well over the 20% threshold that required Board of County Commissioners to have a 4 or 5 vote. That protest does carry forward from this Planning Commission, even though there's not an additional protest period. That protest still stands and will affect the vote count for the Board of County Commissioners at their next meeting. On May 4th, the Board of County Commissioners considered the application. As we all know, their decision was to send it back to us based on the consideration of additional information that was talked about and researched and presented to them that was not considered initially by the Planning Commission, and I'll go into what that information is in just a moment. Specifically, as mentioned in your staff report, staff was able to receive comments from KDOT as well as the K&O Railroad, which is the railroad line that goes through there, regarding their position on this. KDOT said that they don't have jurisdiction to govern the land uses surrounding their rights-of-way. The railroad had a comment saying, given the initial site plan, which is on the screen in front of you right now, that they had no issues with it because of the trajectories or proposed trajectories of the shooting on the site being away from the rail line. As you guys know within your staff report, and I will get into this a little bit more, there is an updated site plan. That updated site plan was submitted to the railroad after the mailing of this staff report. Long story short with that, they initially had some issues with it. They were able to get in contact with the applicant. They worked some things out. My understanding from the applicant is that the railroad is no longer having any issues with that. I didn't receive official word back from the railroad, but basically their concern was, if you go to the updated site plan, the change of the shotgun range to being pointed to the north and east was providing them some reservations, but they talked with the applicant, and based on some of the information the applicant stated regarding, one more please. Okay, I thought we had the updated site plan. Can you look for that, please? I thought we had it in here. I apologize. Based on the trajectory of the new shotgun range, they were going to have some issues, but they worked some things out with the applicant regarding some of the things they could do with the throwing device and making sure that nothing was going to be leaving the property. But that's just information I got from the applicant. The major thing that was talked about was the possible effects on groundwater. After the March 17th Planning Commission hearing, staff reached out to the Department of Environmental Health. And we have Director Susan Erlewine here with us today who can answer any technical questions about the information in the report. She provided a report which was included in your packet. This report was provided to the Board of County Commissioners outlining possible considerations regarding firing of ammunition that may contain lead and the possible effects on groundwater. Some of the brief high-level overview is the fact that you already have potentially a high water table in the area. You have very porous soil that allows air and water to flow through it very quickly. And when you already have pits that are 20 to 25 feet lower than the surface level to where they generally hold water every so often, potentially because of high groundwater levels anyway, there's concerns about possible groundwater contamination. She had a recommendation that stated, due to the high groundwater table in the area that is used by nearby residents for drinking water, I recommend the applicant develop and present for approval best management practices for the shooting range that address the ongoing management of lead. This should include the protection of the customers as well as the environment. With that in mind, the applicant did create a proposal for best management practices that was also included in your packet. A high-level overview on that talked about how they would fence in the area, there'd be restricted access, there'd be berms that would be constructed that would receive the bullets. Those berms would be cleaned every 3 years unless data suggested otherwise, with no more than 5 years being elapsing before cleaning happened regardless of what the data said. Rules and regulations would be posted, that much of the tree canopy would be retained to mitigate noise. Rules and regulations would be posted. Violation of those rules would be grounds for revocation of their membership. Non-lead shot will be required for the 5-stand or the clay pigeon shotgun range. And then the pH of the soil will be checked annually to determine its acidity. If the soil is too acidic, which promotes lead absorption, lime would be added to the areas where the lead is trapped. Again, you have the full report in your thing. This was just a high-level overview of that. Since the mailing of these staff reports, staff received additional information, as I said, and I apologize that it's not on the screen here, but in your packet, and it's also in staff reports as well, is the updated site plan that they provided to planning staff. It's important to note that the Board of County Commissioners did not review this site plan. This was submitted after the meeting and again submitted after the mailing of a report. That's why you have the additional information on a separate packet that was given to you earlier this week. You can see that they are reorienting the site to where the rifle range is going to be in the northwest corner. of the site and shooting to the west. The red line on the site plan indicates a 12-foot berm that they will be constructing to receive the ammo from the rifle range. They're moving the shotgun range into a different depression and again shooting up like they had been before. It's just the orientation is now to the northeast. The pistol range is moving to the southeast or southwest corner. The western berms will be 12 foot, just like the one on the rifle range, but the berms in between the stations will be 8 foot, and that's according to the email that was attached in your addendum as well. That's information that was provided by the applicant. In addition to your packet, and I'm not going to go into all of these details, I more or less provided it to you for your information for the applicant to use as a reference. They provided site pictures of existing conditions of things that are going to be cleaning up on the site. Additionally, you have at your desk additional public comment that I have received this week in relation to the new site plan that was sent out. We shared that with interested parties that have been involved so that they had the opportunity to review it and use it to form their comments for you this afternoon. The final thing that I will say is that staff recommendation is not changing. It is not really the common practice for the staff recommendation to change. This meeting here is for us to resource you. Your task today is to consider whether or not you're going to retain your previous recommendation, which again was an approval recommendation, with one additional condition on staff's recommendation, or whether or not you're going to potentially add additional conditions. Your recommendation can change entirely. You're here to address the new information that was provided related to the groundwater, possible comments from the railroad, the new orientation of the site plan, which is all new information, and then obviously here some limited public comment based on what you feel is necessary, and render a recommendation to take back to the Board of County Commissioners again. With this not having a protest period, the Board of County Commissioners meeting is set for June 22nd. It is 1 week, a little bit longer than we wanted to, but there was possible fluctuation with their June 15th meeting. We decided we didn't want any last minute changes if they considered canceling it. So we went for one that was pretty set in stone for June 22nd. Will be their meeting. I believe that is all I have for you. Again, I apologize that the most up-to-date site plan that is in your packet in the addendum did not make it into the presentation, but you do have it all at your desks to reference. I will leave this packet up here for any speakers in the room who want to reference the site plan as well so that they can make note of it and let you know what they're talking about. And I think I can stand for any questions that
Any
you might
questions
have
of
for
staff?
staff.
Ms. Fox?
Just
I
one,
mean,
Philip,
Foster.
the 90% protest, that's square footage of land, but approximately how many actual landowners were in the protest area?
Let me look at a map real quick and get you, actually, there's a protest map there. So you have, looks like in terms of parcels, I don't know about individual landowners because some people might own multiple parcels. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 parcels. I know there's several who own multiple parcels in here, so you're looking at maybe 8 or so individual unique property owners.
So that 90% is 90% of a really small number of people, actually.
Right. And of course, it's based on land area, but again, it's based on the amount of land individuals own.
Any other questions, Mr. Warren?
Philip, you mentioned it in as you were summarizing, but I couldn't write them down fast enough.
That's okay.
What were the areas that were considered new information? The railroad?
Yes, so again, we had shared information with the railroad. We shared the new site plan with them. They initially said they had concerns with the orientation, but they've talked with the applicant and apparently those are alleviated. So that was new information that happened after the Planning Commission. You have the possible groundwater effect. And again, we have Director Erlenwine with the Department of Environmental Health. She was the one who authored the report that was in your packet. She can answer technical questions about the effects on groundwater. And then, the new site plan has a different orientation. It is staff's understanding that the new orientation was to help mitigate the possible effects on groundwater by taking out the rifle range shooting into one of the depressions so that if that bullet has lead in it, knowing their non-lead shot was only going to be for shotguns. The rifle range could potentially have lead based on their proposal. By taking that out of being in the bottom of the depressions, you're making that ammunition going into a berm that's going to be cleaned and not necessarily being infiltrated into the groundwater, is my understanding of their new proposal. But I can let the applicant speak to that. So you have railroad comment, groundwater, new site plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Philip, are you including in the new information the letter we got from the Mound Ridge, or the Mount Hope city official?
The information is about public comment. I guess I will defer to council as I supplied you with any additional public comment that I received. Obviously, you can address their public comments if you need. My understanding is that the mayor of Mount Hope will likely be here today. If he's not, he indicated that he'd be coming to provide comment. He wanted to provide you the written comment, knowing the length of it would probably not fit into the 3 minutes that he was given to speak. So
Okay.
he is here. So if you'd like to ask him questions or clarification about his comment, you are welcome to do so.
So, Bill, we have to decide whether we're going to open it up for public opinion?
Chairman Justin Wagner, there's not a requirement by statute that you have to reopen it for a public hearing. I think it may be worth, I would probably suggest towards doing so. It doesn't necessarily mean you'd have to do the 10 minutes and 3 minutes. The reason I say that is the applicant submitted new material clearly. I think you're going to have questions for them, and kind of from a due process standpoint, I would, again, maybe with the caveat of limiting the comments to the new information, I think you could open it up to public comment as well, but it's not a hard and fast requirement by statute.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to ask the commissioners, what's the time limit we should let on the applicant as well as the people want to talk on it? Mr. Warren?
There's no rules here, so just kind of whatever we think, but I would say 5 minutes for the applicant and 2 minutes for the public speaking.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I got a motion. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes. Why are we lowering it to 3 minutes? I mean, it's 3 minutes. Why are we lowering it to 2 minutes?
I guess I'm going to say that what we decide today, we're just sending back to the county commissioners. They're the one that's going to get the final decision on this. You make a substitute motion if you want.
Okay, I'd like to substitute the motion to include 3 minutes for public comment.
And 5 for the applicant?
Yes.
Do I have a second on the substitute motion?
Second.
A motion by Ms. Cunningham, second by Ms. Foster. Any discussion on the substitute motion? Okay, let's vote on it. All in favor of the substitute motion, say aye.
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 Roll call.
Yeah, we better.
Yes, sir. Bill Johnson.
No.
Give me just 1 minute. McKay.
No.
Green.
No.
Blick.
Aye.
Nix. No. Foster.
Aye.
Warren.
No.
Joe Johnson.
No.
Miles.
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye.
Cunningham.
Aye.
Five ayes and 6 noes.
That motion fails, so now we can go back to the original motion. Let's have a roll call on it.
Yes, sir. Bill Johnson.
Yes.
McKay,
Yes.
Green, Blick,
No.
Nix, Foster,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Joe Johnson,
Yeah.
Miles,
Yes.
Hartman,
Yes.
Cunningham.
No.
I have 2 noes and 9 yeses.
That motion is approved, so now we'll hear from the applicant on this item.
Chairman, should we hear from Ms. Earlywine first? Environmentalist, do we have any questions of her based on the information that was given to us?
Well, here's that turn we asking.
Yeah, I'm talking about environmental, Earlywine.
Oh, you want to hear that first?
Yeah, I would think it'd be better, that way if we got any questions, it'll
Okay.
be kind of technical.
Hi, good afternoon, Susan Erlenwine with Environmental Resources. You've read my report. This area is known to be sandy, has gravel, water moves through it quickly, it has a high yield of water, well tested east of this in section 17, tested 2,000 gallons per minute for the water recovery. A well in the southeast corner of section 18, when it was drilled back in 1975, showed that the static water table was 15 feet below the surface. As you know, water rises and lowers with droughts and wet seasons. Looking back at old aerial photos of this area, the pits have water in them. Every time I've traveled by this area, which is quite a bit, I have seen times where the pits were dry and many times where there's water in them. To give you an example, North Ridge Road, you have the old sand pits, and the development north of 21st Street and 29th Street. The water you see in those lakes is the top of the water table. It's about 3 to 6 feet below the surface. So in this section, we know that the water table has been 15 feet below the surface, and water can come up through the bottom of these pits. The applicant, I commend them for looking at the best management practice that was developed by EPA along with NRA and some shooting groups. It recommends different practices and it's site-specific because each shooting site's going to be different than another one. What they look at is what's important to consider. And in this report, and I could read you a couple of sections, but it says the shorter the distance traveled, the greater the risk that lead will migrate into the environment. It points out how important it is that consider groundwater depth. The most important site selection criteria to consider when selecting a new range location include topography, surface water flow patterns, and depth to groundwater. They recommend a flat surface is better than, a curved one that may have water flowing off-site. In this case, they are shooting down into the bottom of a pit. LIDAR topography information and the contours shows that the bottom of the pit is 26 feet below the surface. As you know, LIDAR is very good data for elevations. So I think whatever they do as far as shooting down into the pit, you're having a chance of the bullets, which lead fragments, so you have more surface area exposed, going down in and being closer to the groundwater level. So their recommendation of digging it out every 3 years, in between, you have the possibility of groundwater coming up and interacting with the lead bullets. An easy remedy would be to go to non-lead ammunition. You have copper alloys, tungsten, bismuth. There are many different ammunitions out there now for rifles and pistols that are not lead, just like you have non-lead shot. So that would kind of take this off the table if they were to go that avenue. So I'm not against shooting. I'm a gun owner, but I do think it should be done in a reliable, safe manner for the environment. And in this case, the high groundwater table is an issue. once water gets into the groundwater table, it can migrate quickly, according to the USGS and Kansas Geological Survey reports. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mr.
The,
Green?
I noticed that in your recommendation that they present for approval the best management practices for a shooting range. Who would be on the receiving end of that policy, and who would ultimately have the approval saying that what they have presented actually do represent best practices?
Right. After I requested that, I did see a copy of their best practices, which included the cleaning out every 3 years, testing the soil for acidity, because the more acidic the water or the soil, the more rapidly that could dissolve the lead. That still doesn't get away from the fact that they may be shooting into the groundwater itself. So digging out the soil is after the fact, that you may have already had the exposure. But I asked that same question of people, and who would police, so to speak, who would enforce this? And the answer was kind of not sure. It could be the Metropolitan Area Planning Department, it could be my department, it could be a combination of both departments, but I think that should be addressed as to how often would reports be given as to what's the results of the soil test or digging out of the area, and making sure that it is followed. Or if you go to the route of non-lead ammunition, to make sure that is being done.
Well, I would think that it would be helpful for the developer to have some kind of guidance on who is going to approve or deny what their practices are and what they propose to do. It's easy for us to sit here and say, to do this, but to get an answer to see if in fact they are doing what they have agreed to do.
I agree.
And if it meets approval, so.
It could be a combination of MAPD and my department is kind of the answer I received.
But who can we tell them today that they can report to and
Justin?
expect to have an answer?
I think that's a legal answer.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, up on the screens is the newest actual revised site plan that the individuals wanting to do this operation have proposed. So this is the actual current revision that should have been in your packet. And I think what I'm hearing, Commissioner Green, I think there are two questions here. One is, who's going to enforce it? And the enforcement, I'm the zoning administrator for both city and county. The county person is Kelly Dixon in MABCD. He would be the one most directly who would be on scene enforcing it to the extent possible, knowing that some of these conditions might be somewhat difficult to enforce. I think the question I hear you asking is, what group will actually approve the BMPs, approve them prior to the enforcement of them? Is that correct?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
Who will approve, and then who will have ultimate oversight for the developer?
Yeah, that to my mind, and it may well be that would work with Susan, but the enforcement would be the standard enforcement practices, which would be MABCD, possibly in conjunction with MAPD, if I'm needed for assistance.
And you'd be set up to be able to determine the amount of lead in the water and that type of
No,
thing?
that would take some other, and I'm not even sure that, that's, Justin, do you have a comment?
Sure. Justin Wagner, Assistant County Counselor. I think in crafting your conditions, if for example, you would recommend approval with condition on some of these environmental factors that are being discussed, I guess one of the threshold questions would be like a site plan or an approval of the best management practices. I think you could specify subject to the approval of the Environmental Resources Director of Sedgwick County. That's kind of the bar for getting started. If we're talking about follow-up condition, I think you could say you could have them turn in reports, for example, of the soil studies, and have them turn it in and say, laying out again, to the approval of the Environmental Resources Director, if we're talking about the environmental impact. Now, if they would fail to turn those in, the prosecution component would probably be the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department would be the ones writing a ticket traditionally for a zoning and enforcement issue on that. But I think you could incorporate and defer to Susan and her staff's expertise in terms of determining, you know, and you might even ask her, if you see fit to craft such a condition, you could ask her if there are certain thresholds that she thinks would be appropriate, or certain markers that would indicate lead exposure, or you could be more open-ended. I think there's a few ways that could be handled. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Okay, any, Warren?
Yeah,
I
go
like,
ahead.
I like the aspect of looking at non-lead ammunition. Is that for all the ranges, or is there, as you're looking at the site plan, the one that goes into the pit and shooting downward being the one that's one at risk? Would the risk be the same for the shotgun range and the hand and the pistol range?
I believe the shotgun range, they were already planning on using non-lead shot. So I'm mainly looking at shooting down into the pit because you're so close to the groundwater. And I'm sure the groundwater comes up into the bottom of those pits, so you have that interaction. Any horizontal, they would still have to adhere to trying to collect as much lead as possible. And in fact, on the EPA guidelines, you know, what they point out is lead management is important, and it takes time and money to do that. So a good system setup, a good best management practice from the start is important for any new shooting range.
Any other questions?
Could I?
Mr. Blick?
Yes.
Question I have is, we have another shooting range in Sedgwick County. It's the Sedgwick County shooting range that's within 200 feet of Lake Afton. How is it any different than what this shooting range would be?
I have been out to the Lake Afton range numerous times. That is a clay soil. There's containment to keep any surface runoff from going over to the creek that leads into the lake. They do dig out the berms and takes the lead out. The difference is this is a sandy soil which allows porosity, permeability, and fast movement of water through it. And you have the high groundwater table here at this location versus Lake Afton.
So the Lake Afton, Sedgwick County range, is it non-lead also or not?
Is it what?
Non-lead?
No, it is not. And I could work with the Sheriff's Department on changing that. And they're not the only ones who use it, by the way.
Any other questions?
Yeah, yes, I have a couple.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yes, on the firing ranges that are gonna have lead, do you agree with Philip that there won't be runoff down, that'll run like surface water that runs down into the pit?
You cut in and out there. Could you repeat that? I got
Yes,
the part about agreeing with Philip, but I didn't hear what was after that.
Will surface water from the firing range run down into the pit?
Yes.
Okay.
And water would come up from the groundwater into the bottom of the pit as the water table rises. So you have two factors there, the slope of the sides of the pit directing rainwater down to the bottom, and you have the groundwater coming up from the bottom.
Okay, I'm talking about the new location of the pistol and fire ranges where the lead will be, according to their new plan. Will surface water run over to the pit and down into the pit?
I would have to look at that more carefully on the LiDAR information.
Okay. And do you think that this is a do-it-yourself remediation process, or should they hire professionals to clean up the lead?
I've seen it done both ways. There's a long list in the EPA document of companies out there that you can hire to come in, and this is what they do, is to clean out the lead from shooting ranges. And then
Right,
they
okay.
actually use the lead to recycle it.
Right. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the important point about this new site plan is that they have changed their shooting ranges. I think the rifle is no longer shooting into a pit, and the shotgun appears to actually be in the pit and shooting up and out of it. And then the pistol range that was not shooting into a pit originally, I believe, is still not shooting into a pit. But I don't believe they're generally shooting into the pits anymore. I think now it's going to be grade, which may bring up other questions about how do you contain those projectiles.
Okay, any more questions? Ready for the applicant? Applicant, please come forward, give us your name and address, and you got 5 minutes.
I'm Tyler Graves. I live at 2956 North Gulf Breeze Court here in Wichita. Before I start touching on a question that Ms. Foster had asked about the 11 protests, 5 of those parcels belong to one family and 2 belong to another family. So there's 4 of 6 protested. And then kind of touching on something else, our shotgun, it is down in the pit shooting up, but the trajectory of shot shell maximum shot, which we'll restrict to 7.5, so we'll never get close to it, is 654 feet. I don't know if that was included in your packet, but I did provide that. The rail line's over 700 feet. So touch, and we heard Susan speak at the county commissioners meeting, and one of the things that we couldn't address with our lead mitigation plan was the rising of that groundwater and then our berms being underwater. So what we did was we adjusted our site plan to, in those depressions, there won't be any lead. I don't know if you guys had an opportunity to see the pictures of down there, but now that it's our property, we're gonna have to do lead mitigation down there anyways, because I provided pictures of trees that have been cut down with shotguns. You can see all the lead inside of them. There's car batteries, oil cans. It's been a dumping area for the last, I don't know how many years, but we will get that cleaned up, and then all of our lead shot will take place at the, not down into the depression or shooting down into the depression. I spoke with a company out of Denver called MT2. They do this lead recycling. They have never done business in Kansas. They said to their knowledge that no place required, in Kansas, no place required them to have a lead mitigation plan. Everything they did was in California, Washington, and Oregon, and Colorado. And we talked to them a little bit about what we're doing and got their kind of guidelines on what their suggestions were. 8 to 12 foot berms, impact berms. So as you can see on our site plan here in the southwest corner, we have that back wall will be 12 feet. And then there's 50 yards of trees, very, very mature trees between our property line and the back of the berm. So obviously exceeding the height very much so. Oh, perfect. And then our shotgun will be here, obviously shooting this way. This is 5-stand. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that, but essentially you program your throwers to throw in different angles and, you know, coming at you, going out, things like that. So those will all be programmed by our trap manufacturer to make sure that the trajectory of our shot never leaves our property line, which was an ordinance that the county commission got into. And then we did speak with Lauren Bradford with the railroad. He had emailed Philip concerned about the trajectory, and after we explained to him what that is, he was no concerns with it and asked for a membership packet. So no concerns there. But I don't. Do you guys have any questions or?
Any questions of the speaker? Mr. McKay?
Sir, have you ever considered, it was brought up, it was sort of wine that you could restrict it to non-lead ammunition.
Yes, so we
Give you
looked
a
in.
good opportunity to sell some too.
Sorry about that. Yes, sir, we looked into that. And I got with, in my career, I worked with some ammo manufacturers, and we got with them and said, look, if I can find projectiles, which is the actual bullet, would you load for me? And I talked to Hornady, Cellular and Beloit, Federal, some major manufacturers. I found one bullet that was all zinc that we could do. And then there was another company, and also in Denver, that is called EcoMass, and they make it's an injection molded projectile with copper and there's a ton of other metals in it, but it's injection molded. I got some of those projectiles to these manufacturers and asked what it would cost. So 9mm and .223 are the most prevalent rounds. To buy your run-of-the-mill 9mm is 30 cents a round, and .223 is 46 cents a round. In order to go to non-lead with that EcoMass bullet, took 9mm up 20 cents to 50 cents a piece, and it took .223 up 13 cents to 59 cents. So we felt that it was in our best interest as trying to run a business to figure out a way to address Susan's concerns of lead being underwater. It's one of those things where that's a substantial cost, and we felt it would really deter our ability to sell memberships if we had to move to a non-lead option. So moving up to that ground level and building berms that far exceed everybody's guidelines for ranges was what we felt was probably in our best interest. And the site plan is great too, because the family that had five of the protests, their house actually sits off the map. I provided now their house is it's a little under half a mile away from the closest shooting. So not that there's a sound ordinance out in the county, but it's obviously something that was important to us, so.
Mr. Green, you have?
Yeah, the shooting range, or the rifle range there in the southwest corner, do you have any idea at ground level? I guess that the pit area is where there's 12 foot of distance between the groundwater but it could overlap. What's the elevation distance between the bottom of that pit and the bottom of your berm that you're going to be building for that rifle range? You see?
I understand. Based on the topography maps that we've received, it's somewhere between 20 and 25 feet.
The distance between the bottom of that pit and the
ground
bottom
level.
And ground level for your berm?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. And now the properties around us all have, I would say it's probably 12 to 18 inches lower than our ground. And I don't know if that's something to try to keep the nitrates out of going into that hole, or what that was off the farm ground around us. I don't know the reasoning for those, but around our land it does have that, so.
Any other questions, Mr. Speaker?
I know that the shotgun shells, you're going to be using steel shot.
Steel and bismuth.
What is the average distance for shotgun pellet traveling? How far is that?
Did you include that, Philip, that ballistics?
It may have been in, yeah.
Okay. So the maximum was what we were looking at.
Yeah.
Just if it's at the perfect trajectory and the perfect
Loads.
load, sure.
Yeah.
So here is this is a ballistics, shot shell ballistics for 7.5 shot, maximum distance and angle of travel. So the max horizontal distance measured in feet of 7.5 shot is 574 feet.
Okay. And that
excuse me.
clearly is not going to be able to go past your
No, and at the end of our
property
lines,
line, yeah.
at the end of our lines on this map, sorry, these right here, these trees are actually up on a berm already. And I would say they're probably 60 to 70-foot trees sitting on a 10-foot berm now. So I don't expect, even if it could, I don't think it'd get through those trees, so.
I guess I need to keep in mind that 570-foot distance when I'm hunting doves. And then the clay pigeon distance that those fly, your targets.
Yep.
Those are clearly not going to go any farther than the shot.
No, and those are all biodegradable. They will be going at angles across the range. There will be one coming back towards the shooter, but everything's happening across the range too. So
Okay.
it's heavily wooded too, so.
Any other questions, Speaker?
I got one. Bill?
Yes, Ms.
Yeah.
Hartman.
You said there was a residence, say, a half a mile away?
So if you see this little spot right here, this is I think it's a cell tower.
Yeah,
Their house sits somewhere right down in here.
and that's the closest
That's the
residence?
only residence within that protest
Okay.
area.
And what was the protest, Philip? What was it, 1,000 feet?
Is a 1,000-foot radius.
Okay.
I do think there's a house down here somewhere, but it's like a junkyard. There's cars and it's not a habitated. There's nothing down there, so.
Any other questions, Speaker? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else want to speak on this item? Anybody else want to speak on this item? Please come forward and give us your name. You'll have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, if you're interested, the protest area map is up on the screen showing the distances.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Terry Summers from Mount Hope. I'm the mayor out there. And I just had some concerns. I sent you a letter, and I'll try not to be redundant pertaining to that. But I think in all this, our biggest concern is the fact that we've never met the developers. We've never had a conversation with the developers, and hence we've received absolutely no direct information from them. And so that's really concerning to me, even though we're outside of the area of influence. And I think that's a concerning thing. We were told in the early phases of that they wanted to talk to us, and it has never materialized. And we've tried to set that up more than once. And so I want to make sure, and then my name was invoked at the commission meeting, and saying I was excited for this thing to move forward. And I just want you to know that, with all due respect, I'm not the least bit excited about a project without knowing and meeting the proponents. And so I feel like that's a serious element that ought to be considered. You're talking about groundwater. From this place, half a mile east is our city limits. Okay, just inside of the city limits is our main well. And we're concerned about the groundwater contamination, even though you're discussing that at this particular time. However, in 25, all municipalities have to begin testing and rectifying copper lead content in your water. And so what impact will any of those contaminants coming down affect us, pertaining to that? And we've had a couple of communities northwest of us that have had to put in special water treatment plants because of various kinds of contamination. And I certainly don't want to be the one on board when we have to deal with such contamination. So why add to that?
Your 2 minutes are up.
Well, okay.
We'll ask some questions of you, though.
Okay.
So, thank you for your service as mayor. I know it can be a thankless job.
Thank you.
So, this is not in the city of Mount Hope, correct?
No, it's
And
outside.
And it's outside of your
Jurisdiction.
jurisdiction
Right,
for your
yeah.
area of influence.
Yeah. And that's
Okay.
because of when they took away the area of influence,
Yeah,
we were locked back into our comprehensive plan. And that's based on projected growth in the next, up to, ours right now is to 2030. We were also told that it needed to be reasonable, and needed to be reasonable within what would be accepted within up to 2030. So therefore, I guess there's a chance to expand that, but it's not practical within 2030.
and then I guess the second question, you may or may not know the answer to this, it may be the environmental representative here, but you're concerned about the groundwater. And you said that your primary well for Mount Hope is how far due west? Southwest?
Our city limits is a half a mile east of the proposed site, the property. And just inside of that is our main well. Half a mile, that's only 2,640 feet.
Sure.
And,
Ask for the protest map to be, excuse me, put the protest map up, that actually shows the boundary of the city. I think we'd all be a little clearer on what's going on.
And
Not that one, the one with the 3 color bands.
Stand by just a moment.
That one.
Okay.
The purple line is the Mount Hope city limits, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And staff may be able to show you how to use the mouse so you can kind of point.
Okay.
You may be able to do it there on your own. Could you show us approximately where that well that you're just mentioning is located?
I believe if this is our school, it's right there.
Okay, all right. Do we know, I know groundwater flows, travels, there's rivers underground. Do we know which way the groundwater is flowing in this area?
In general, the groundwater flows northwest to southeast through Sedgwick County, but there's local deviations due to surface water bodies that may flow to a river or lake, or also if you have wells with a high volume of water being pumped out, is what's called the cone of depression, where it draws in from all directions. And so depending on the pump rate, the size of the well, it can draw water from a large distance toward it.
And I guess farmers' irrigation wells would be another
Absolutely.
condition.
And there's many stories of one farmer pumping so much water out that he draws the water table down below the bottom of a neighboring farmer, and you get into water battles that
Right.
way.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. This site is in the Gar Peace watershed, and it appears on that map to maybe go right across that city well site.
I'm sorry, you
Susan,
cut out.
can Susan address the Gar Peace watershed?
Watersheds are developed for surface water runoff through an area, the tributaries going to rivers, and there are many watersheds through the county, and I don't know the specifics on that particular watershed. I could look into it, but not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Any other questions of the speaker? Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jack Heflin. One, runoff water, rainwater from our
Could you
fields.
give us your address?
Pardon me?
Your address, please.
10255 North, 295th Street West.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
The runoff rainwater from our fields are prohibited from draining into the pits because of nitrates, fertilizer, herbicides, etc. They can pollute the groundwater, but lead is okay. It's nanoparticles that contaminate, potentially polluting water for miles around. Water for humans, livestock, crops, and pets. Can't taste it, can't see it, can't smell it, but it's damaging. 2 is property values decrease when gun ranges are incorporated into an area because of the noise. Can you assure us that others that this won't happen? Quality of life. Health is a big issue. Stress, anxiety, annoyance, the expense of doctor visits, missed work and income from appointments. Well-being in general is at risk. 4, noise. There may be only 2 houses within 1,000 foot, but hundreds can hear the gunshots. Gunshot noise goes for miles, interrupting everyday life 8 a.m. to half an hour before sunset, 7 days a week. It's very annoying. And how would y'all like to live like that? Safety, security, compliance, regulations, management, ricochets, traffic, it goes on and on and on. You just can't say enough about safety. Any questions?
Any questions of the speaker?
If I have time, I'd like to make some comments on the map.
You got 20 seconds.
I see the wells are pointed out there for private wells. I counted 33 of them in 3,000 foot area, radius area of that site. So.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item? Okay, we'll have rebuttal from the applicant. We'll give you 1 minute.
I just want to make notice that we have a well there too. We'll be drinking the same water. It's obviously in our best interest not to contaminate the groundwater there. And then reiterate, obviously, the current and future areas of influence is not impacted by Mount Hope. We were working with Kayleen Howe at the K96 corridor business development team, and that's how Mayor Summers' name came up. We had attempted to set up multiple meetings with him, but obviously it didn't work out. So I don't have much more.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I might add one thing. There isn't a noise ordinance out there, and there is railroad tracks and a 4-lane highway that run through this property. So I understand, but.
Yeah, bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board? What I understand, we got to determine only on water and the site plan is the only new information we received.
I think I'll defer to the law department to address that.
Justin Wagner again, Chairman. You are still making a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. Your recommendation can be to approve, your recommendation can be to deny. These are, and keep in mind, there's 2 conditional uses as part of this single application, and you can attach reasonable conditions to either of those conditional uses that are proposed. I would remind the Planning Commission that if you vary from your recommendation from what you did back in March in the original hearing, I would suggest that you make supplemental or replacement findings to go along with that, because the findings that were in place then, there is new information from then, there's a new site plan, so it may be appropriate if you take that route to, in fact, it probably would be appropriate to make either different findings or supplemental findings as well. Does that answer your question, Chairman?
Any questions, council?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll let, like you're getting ready to say something.
No, I don't have anything.
Green?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the request and have a supplemental recommendation that the applicant submit the best practices plan and that it is approved by the Environmental Services Director, or I'm sorry, Environmental Resources Director, and that failure to either supply the test or the paperwork, and if they fail the test results, then that MABCD be the enforcement tool.
What about the site plan?
And also, thank you, and I also would approve the site plan that is,
New revised.
the revised site plan that was presented today's meeting.
Got a motion, to have a second? Go ahead.
Does this also include the previous condition from the previous recommendation about the hours of operation?
Yeah, these are additional supplemental conditions, yeah.
Got a motion by Mr. Green.
Wait, Flip?
Commissioner Green, I just had a quick question to confirm. Now,
Commissioner Green, just on your motion, I think it could be appropriate, because you've made some supplemental recommendations to state any findings or bases behind that. For example, if you're adding stuff about the groundwater, in terms of new information and findings that lead remediation would be, lead monitoring and possible remediation may be appropriate, something along those lines.
Okay.
Just as a finding to substantiate the modification. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah. What the counselor just said. That the remediation, the lead reading for the groundwater, potential groundwater contaminations would be presented to the Environmental Resources Director. That MABCD would be the enforcement tool.
Okay, we got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Foster. Any discussion?
I have a discussion. So I just want to verify your motion, Mr. Green, that we're not putting any restrictions on them for lead. They would just be required to report to the Director for Ground Contamination, correct?
They have submitted a best practices, and I believe that a part of that best practices was their
Okay.
remediation
Okay.
of the lead. Yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed? 11-0. Next item is 4.3, CUP 2022-00007.
Again, good afternoon. Philip Ziebenbergen with planning staff for the record. Community Unit Plan 2207 is a request to amend the Mays and 29th Commercial Community Unit Plan DP 327 located on the northeast corner of North Mays Road and West 29th Street North. The purpose of this amendment is the applicant is requesting to waive the requirement for a 3-foot-high curvilinear earthen berm that front parcels 6A and 6B. Those are the parcels that are in the dark outline on the screen. Parcel 6, the whole community unit plan are zone limited commercial at 3134 North Mays Road. A little bit of backstory on this. The Parcel 6A, which is the northernmost parcel, is undeveloped. Parcel 6B has been recently developed with a Dunkin' Donuts. When Parcel 1, which is the large parcel here where Sam's Club is located, if you're familiar with this site, when it was developed, the 3-foot-high curvilinear earth berms were constructed in front of all of these parcels here and then all of the parcels along West 29th Street as well. That includes parcels 2, 3, 4, 5, 6A, and 6B. When all of those subsequent parcels have been developed, the ones that have been developed, the ones along West 29th Street include an automotive shop. There's retail stores there. Sam's Club has their gas there. Thank you, Tybin. All of those berms were retained. When Dunkin' Donuts went in on parcel 6B, the curvilinear berm was removed just along the frontage of 6B. It still exists in front of parcel 6A, but on 6B it was removed. The removal of the earth berm was brought to the attention of the planning department. A temporary certificate of occupancy was granted by the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department to Dunkin' Donuts while the application for this amendment is being discussed. Overall, as you can see on the screen, is developed with big box retail, as well as smaller retail and a automotive. North of here, north of parcel 1, is a church, and then you have IHOP here. Staff is recommending denial of this. This is why we're talking about it today. We do have an option for you, as we usually do with a denial recommendation, of if you look to approve it, what our staff recommendation would be for amended language to the community unit plan. But I'm going to spend a minute here talking about the findings for our denial. It mainly goes in line with when this whole community unit plan was established in 2012. There was significant public engagement regarding the construction of the commercial community unit plan, specifically the Sam's Club. If familiar with the area, the berm that separates Sam's Club and the church area from the Fox Ridge residential development behind them is fairly large, and that was completely due to the public engagement. It also included the berms along the road rights of way. That was all part of the public engagement and all part of the original approval based on the public engagement. As we discussed before, all the other development on the out parcels have retained the landscape berm, which acts as the parking lot screening. The purpose of the berm was to reduce noise and the visual impacts of the development. By allowing either no landscaping or removal of the berm on 6A, you're looking at basically like all these other folks were developed with the understanding of including the earth berm, and now somebody else within the same development isn't being treated the same. They actually get a pass on it. And so you're looking at the impacts on harmonious development when this rule was in place and somebody did not seem to want to follow that rule. So if you eliminate the berm requirement or just landscaping requirement in general, you're looking at just like a disconnect on the harmonious development, even the application of the rule for all development within this community unit plan. So should the Planning Commission recommend approval of this, number one, we'd remind you that you would need to provide alternate findings for your recommendation. But on page 4 of your staff report, we provided recommended text for the community unit plan. This recommended text would only apply to parcels 6A and 6B. And that would be that in place of the 3-foot earth berm on parcels 6A and 6B, they may substitute a solid line of landscaping that must reach a minimum of 3 feet tall when mature with one of the following. Either the landscaping must be on top of a 1-foot-high curvilinear earthen berm, or the landscaping must include at least 4 ornamental or shade trees. So that is a staff recommended text if the Planning Commission were to move for approval on this and override the staff recommendation. If you go through here, let's skip ahead just to the site pictures, because that really kind of tells the story of what's going on here. So this is looking at the Dunkin' Donuts shop. You can see here is where the earth berm exists. This is where it ends. This is their parking lot. This is the grade separation down into the ditch along Maze Road. And because of the way things were developed, they actually had to put these yellow stakes in the ground to ensure somebody does not drive into the berm. Next picture. This is looking to the southeast. You can see on the other side of their drive where the berm ends and where it also then continues as you go further south towards the corner at West 29th Street. Next picture. This is on property again, as I mentioned before. This is where the berm ends and what had to be installed to ensure safe vehicular traffic. Next picture. Again, looking to where that berm ends and then continues on to parcels south of it. Next picture. More of the same, looking to the southwest. Next picture. Oh, that was it. There you go. We had some additional pictures in your site, in your staff report that show the earth berm as it wraps around the other parcels, but I think you kind of get the point. So with that, I can stand for any questions.
Could you go back to the picture that was viewing to the north, where you had the stakes?
This was like the second one.
And then I think that the south could also.
There you go.
Yeah, that one there, and then back behind it. It appears as though this is being designed for future development, where those stakes are. There's going to be drive access to the parcel to
6A.
the north. No, to the north.
Right, that's 6A.
6A,
Yep.
and then also, it appears that there could be, if you do a 180 on this, that there would be street or parking lot access to development to the south.
Right, and that's...
And at the point that this was submitted to MAPCD for plan approval, was that taken into consideration for future development north and south of this parcel?
That's kind of why we're here, is there is basically something missed in the MAPCD plan review, is my understanding.
Okay.
Because the community unit plan clearly identified that the berm was supposed to be there and not be removed, and now we're in the middle of, you have this development with this paved lane, and where do you go from here? And so they have to address the fact that they're out of compliance with the community unit plan before things can move forward.
But it was approved
It
by
was.
the same department?
But it's a conditional occupancy permit.
The original plan was approved with the
Correct.
street or the
And it,
off.
in a sense, it should not have been. So that, again, that's why we're here.
It should not have been, but it was. On parcel 8 and parcel 9, I guess parcel 9, is that where the IHOP is located?
Parcel 9 is where IHOP is located.
Yeah. Does it have the same requirement for the 3-foot berm that these parcels that you're talking about? I couldn't read the fine print.
No, it does not. It's, the text says a 3-foot high curvilinear earth berm would be constructed on the fronts of tracks 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 6 has been split into 6A and B.
6A and 6B. So there was no requirement.
So north of the, north of this drive here, this is where IHOP is. That berm is not required,
The 3-foot
according
berm.
to the community unit plan text.
Okay. And then I think I know the answer to this because I can see the parcels being called out on this map, that the service station there on the northeast corner also does not require the 3-foot berm.
I believe that's correct because it's part of parcel 1.
Yeah.
Mr. Warren? Philip, go back to that picture that looks to the north, that looks at the end of that berm, the previous picture we just had up. Can you describe to me the alternate if we were to approve this, you've got an alternate, a 1 foot berm and trees. Can you talk me through what that would look like from this view?
If you actually go back to where we're looking straight on to Dunkin' Donuts, that might be a little level. Really, there's a box here that I can't get around. So it's like the very first picture it looks, there we go. So there is space, and it'll be kind of a compromise of whether it's on the property or not, because there is the ability to do landscaping along the ditch. So you do have the drive, you do have the pavement right up to the property likely, but there could be some affording to, we could work with the Public Works and Utilities Department on allowing landscaping in the ditch, or they would have to modify their pavement.
I've got a question.
The reason why I brought up the two properties, the IHOP and the service station, is both of those are in the same general area. I like the option that you have for 1 foot with a 3 foot shrub line or whatever, because that's exactly what they've got at IHOP and at that service station is if it's even a foot berm. I think that the bushes and all are constructed at top of curb level.
So I'd like to make a clarification that even though a 3 foot berm is not called out on other parcels, the city does still have its landscape ordinance that requires parking lot screening. That's just more for general information.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's not where I'm going on that.
Mr. Nix?
Go back to the picture just that we had up before. No, yeah. This one, yeah. So, just a comment. To my view, on parcel 6A, it would look a lot better if that berm didn't exist, first of all. I mean, if you had a chance to go up there and look at that, it'd look a whole lot better because it looks decent right now. It looks better right now. If we require them to put a berm, I have no idea. I went up there and walked that thing today. You put a berm there with some vegetation on the thing. I mean, first of all, you need that much space just to make that turn when you go through the drive-through, just to get out on the maze road safely. I mean, I think making it narrower because you put a berm in there would be a big mistake, in my view. And I don't know who put that sidewalk in there. Is that part of the developer that put that little sidewalk in that comes up out of the ditch? I mean, it looks so high right now because you're clear down in the ditch. Somebody sent a report in a while ago and they were accurate. There's mud in that ditch. I mean, the thing goes all the way down in there where that sidewalk's supposed to be, so it makes the elevation look higher. So you put a berm on top of it, it even looks higher yet. I mean, I think the people that developed Dunkin' Donuts ought to be commended for what they've done because it looks better in my view. My opinion.
Mr. Hartman?
Yeah, Philip, on page 4 of the report, this recommendation has the developer been involved with that, or is that just something the planning department came up with?
If I'm honest, this was, I don't know what the developer's comments are on it. They received a copy of the staff report. I don't know what their opinion is.
They weren't involved in that?
I don't believe so. Because they were requesting a waiver of the entire landscape requirement for 6A and B.
Yeah.
And staff's alternative was to provide some level of landscaping.
But at the original, go back to the very original CUP, when it was getting approved, they went through several adjustments with the developer to, I think, the neighborhood is it to the south or what?
To the north and to the
north,
east.
Yeah. They were concerned about the looks of the property next to their neighborhood, and what they were looking for was some buffering.
And I think it could be a question of who owned the property at the time of that versus if the property is now under different ownership.
But anyway, the requirement for the 3 foot berm was to satisfy the neighborhood, basically. They wanted some buffering along the commercial areas. And I don't see anything wrong with your recommendation here. I think the main thing is if they get the buffering that they wanted. I mean, the berm or whatever the option is, I mean, I think if they had options or if they had choices, they could, I don't know for sure, but I would think if that was their purpose, was to create some separation between the buildings and what it looked like from the street, that this option might work. I don't know if the developer on this site just took advantage of that area for more drive and to make his building work. Most developers have a standard footprint for their building, and it didn't fit the standard footprint, but they just made it fit and took the berm out. So I don't know if they were just doing that, but in any case.
Any other questions of staff?
Yes. Can we go back to the picture that shows the front view? Because looking at that one, it almost looks like they would need to put a wall in. That, putting a few shrubs on the front of that slope may or may not contain that slope. It looks like what is that, a 4 or 5 foot drop there at least from the parking level down to the ditch?
Where's the property line there?
I'm not fully aware of where the property line is in relation to the edge of the pavement. You're probably looking at them paving up to the property line would be my estimation.
Okay, I'm not sure the alternative suggested would work from a practical perspective, though I'm trying to judge based on these pictures, and I could be judging wrong. I will say I know that National Change have preset floor plans and they plunk buildings down, but somebody from Dunkin' had to have looked at this site before deciding to put a Dunkin' Donuts there, and you think they would have noticed the berm. So maybe they could have asked first before building all this. Just a thought.
Mr. Warren, did you have?
We haven't got a motion yet, but just a comment. I remember when we went through this, I thought at the original time this was approved that the berms were excessive, but it was what was agreed to. And I've got a problem coming back in now and saying, well, you make concessions to appease the neighborhood and everybody agreed to it, and now we're gonna take that out. And so I think that something's got to go in there too, because I know that there was noise and lights were. I'm not sure if this is a drive-through, but you're gonna have a car coming alongside, shining lights into that neighborhood across the street. From that standpoint, you also may have some noise that the berm was to help deflect that noise up out of that neighborhood a little bit. I thought it was excessive, but it was what was agreed to. So I've got a dilemma. My leaning is to deny the.
Any other questions, staff? Then we'll have the applicant, please.
The berm that was, I think the berm that was the most important for the neighborhood that was making the most noise was, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the berm that was on the east, like you had said, it was to the east and to the north for that subdivision, for Fox Ridge or Fox Run, whichever one it is. Yeah, that was the main concern for the berms.
Any other questions, staff? Thank you, Philip. Applicant or agent? Applicant or agent? Are you virtual by any chance?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, give us your name and address, please.
Kate Koval Engineering.
Should give an address.
Go ahead.
Yes, it's 200 North Emporia, Suite 100, Wichita, Kansas.
This has been, staff has recommended denial. What's your comments on it?
The site plan went through the city and was approved initially as is, and same with the landscaping plan. It went through the city and it was approved. Also, as you guys could see, the ICOP didn't have this berm, so I mean, I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't have followed the requirements, but we did. But we did all I guess what we could do.
Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Okay, hang on, let's see if there's any questions from the commission. Any question of the speaker?
I couldn't understand what she said.
I couldn't either. Philip, did you get a lot what she had to say?
What I understood was that her comment was that they submitted their plans to the city and that they were approved, was my general recollection of what
That's kind of what I heard.
I heard from her.
I guess there's no questions. Is there anybody else in the chamber here want to speak on this item? Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item?
Yes, I do.
Give us your name and address. You got 3 minutes.
My name is Alan. I'm Alan Taylor. I'm at 7924 West Birdie Lane Circle in Wichita. My concern is with the drainage. I did submit a report to Access Wichita complaining about the fact that since the Dunkin' Donuts there has been built, the path there that goes along Mays Road is pretty much always underwater. Today or yesterday I went by there and it is not underwater, but it is covered in 2 or 3 inches of mud, which basically makes it unusable. It has been basically unusable since the Dunkin' Donuts has been built. And I have to believe that having an earthen berm there rather than the drive would significantly affect the drainage there. So I would ask that the berm be required as in the original approval. In fact, and I don't know whether it's appropriate in this meeting, but I would like to have the owner required to do whatever is necessary to provide adequate drainage for that area so that the path is usable along that through there. I did submit an email to staff if anyone's interested. I had a couple of pictures from a few weeks ago and yesterday of what the path looks like. Thank you.
And you had that email at your desks.
Yes. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Kaler, thank you for submitting the email with the pictures. Just a quick question. Has this bike path, was it always clear of mud and water prior to the Dunkin' Donuts going in? Or has that been kind of a swell, low area in the past?
That is a low area, but and it was occasionally covered as you know, all of the low-lying areas are, but it was usable nearly all of the time, except after a big rain or something. Now it is. I have not seen it be usable since the Dunkin' Donut was constructed there.
So it was bad, but it was exacerbated by the Dunkin' Donuts.
It wasn't. I don't even know that it was bad. But there were times where it was not usable, like say after a heavy rain or something.
Okay.
Any other questions, of the speaker? Thank you, sir.
I have a comment on this question.
This is the agent.
Please hang on. I want to see if there's any other speakers. Is there anybody else virtual want to speak on this item?
Yes, I would.
Give us your name and address.
Scott Harper, 251 North Crestway. I'm a member of Mountain Pass Investments, the developer of the site. And so I'd like to just address a couple of things. I guess the comment about the drainage.
Just one moment here. If he's part of Mountain Pass Investments, he's the applicant.
Yeah.
So they had their time. This is public comment time.
Okay, sorry.
You and Caw Valley need to coordinate your times together since you guys are on the pro side of this and we're on the public comment side of this.
Anybody else wanting to speak on this item that's virtual? Hearing none, the applicant's got rebuttal.
So Mr. Harper or a representative from Caw Valley, combined, you have 2 minutes of rebuttal time.
Okay, I'll take a minute and then hand it over to Kate. Sorry about that. On the drainage issue, that's not related to the berm. And as of yesterday, we have installed an additional stormwater inlet to address that. So that should no longer be an issue. The berm, I did just want to reiterate that, we did design this, submit plans, landscaping plans. It was all approved and built as per the approved plans. And only after the fact discovered that, the berm requirement was missed. And so, we're just trying to, address that however we can based on the physical limitations that we now have on the site. As it sits now, there's really not room to put a berm, as well as we have created that cross access to the north. And now we've got a road that is going to be, possibly blocked by a berm if it has to remain there, and we can't really move it to the east because our monument sign is there. So everything was designed with this berm requirement being missed, and now we're in a bit of a conundrum that now we're built. So we want to work with the community and with the city to resolve the issue the best we can. But we're also a little bit bound by what's physically possible. I'll turn it over to Kate.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Warren?
The balance of the time is going to consultant.
Yes, I agree with Scott. The CUP requirement was for the berm was overlooked, and we would like to work with the city to be able to substitute the berm with maybe a shrub line. It is a 3-to-1 slope right now, so it's mobile and maintainable. And I believe that we can put the shrub line in there. And Scott has already covered the drainage concern comment, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Warren?
Yeah, who was our first speaker there? Was it Scott?
Yep, Scott.
Yes. Scott, have you seen, staff came up with an alternate if we decided that we were to agree with the application to remove the berm. They've come up with some alternate wording. Have you read that, and are you in agreement with that recommendation from staff?
I've not read that. I have not read that. I had in early communication in kind of discovering the problem and what to do about it. There was talk about landscaping, i.e. shrubs of 3 feet across the front of there in lieu of the berm, and we're happy to do that. I don't know if you add in, don't know that we could, again, physically kind of accommodate a 1-foot berm, then the shrubbery on top of that. But, I think that maybe helps the situation, but doesn't really solve it based on what's physically possible there. So, but fully supportive of doing the shrubbery.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the speaker?
Yeah, I've got one.
Mr. Green?
When this was developed and you submitted the plans, Scott, I'm assuming that the reason why you designed the parcel or the property the way you did was so that there could be connections to both the parcel to the north and to the south of you. Was that a requirement, or was that something that you did on your own? How did that come to pass, as opposed to just having a concrete curve, curve that would go from your drive-through window over to the driveway out onto the street?
Sure. So So for the property to the south of the Duncan, that's part of the original plat or CUP, that is a shared access point with that lot to the south, which is different ownership. So we are pretty much required to share that one access point onto Mays with that ownership. The lot to the north of the Duncan, we also retain ownership of that at this point in time. And so it was, although no requirement, parcel 6A, although no requirement to have cross-access there, just for the future developability of that site, where it does not have its direct access to Mays Road, allowing that shared access and cross-access with 6B is pretty important to be able to attract and gain another national tenant at this location.
Yeah, I can see on the commercial CUP plan here that there is a joint access, or there's limited, there's access control, except for one opening there before parcel 5 and 6, which is now 6A and 6B. So I understand that there is just that one point of access where your driveway is there on this, going into your parcel, so.
Okay, did he answer your question?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Bring it back to the board. What's the pleasure of the commission?
I'd like to move to deny.
Second.
Got a motion to deny by Ms. Foster, second by Mr. Warren. Any discussion?
I have discussion. So I agree with the motion. The problem I see is if we set a presence for the existing tenants that followed the policy, then that might give them right to just go ahead and start cut their berms back out. Or we could have a whole mess of things. That's probably my biggest concern with that is that, and also I can see with the height, there's a house directly across from where their drive-through is. Without that berm, it will be shining directly in their house because it's lifted 5 foot. And if you look at the sight lines and you go stand in their driveway, it goes right into that person's house directly across the street. So I do see the purpose of the berm, and I'm fully supportive of the motion also.
My concern here, I understand the reason for the berm. I get the concern about the house across the street, that lights could be shining in there. What my problem is, or what my issue is that multiple. One, how is this going to be resolved by denying the applicant's request? How is that? How do we resolve the issue of getting the berm back? Secondly, there is complete access control on Mays Road except for one opening for these two parcels, parcel 5 and parcel 6. I understand 6 is two parcels now, 6A and 6B, which then requires them to have joint access between 5 and 6, which now with 6A, it's made that even more of an issue because that 6A is how they're going to get out, is by going across 6B through the Dunkin' Donut driveway and then whatever is in parcel 5. So we have that issue. And the parcel to the north, and I know IHOP is not a part of this, but IHOP has a large parking lot there. They have no berm, but they do have shrubs that are at curb level. So the people that live across the street from IHOP, they have bushes that will cut off the lights from the headlights. And then also down there at the service station, it too has bushes at curb level and above, with no berm. So I understand, I know why the berms were put in. The major focus was the properties to the east and to the north, which was resolved with the berms that they built there. There are too many issues that are not going to be addressed by just denying the applicant's request here. So I would make a substitute motion to approve and require a 1-foot berm with bushes, solid line of shrubs on the top of that berm for parcels 6A, 6B, and for parcel 5 eventually down the road. I know that this is 6A and 6B. We can't have future on 5, but that would be my motion. And
Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Nix. Any discussion?
I'd like to ask staff, if the motion were denied, not the substitute motion, but the original motion, the next step would then be the landowner would have to somehow negotiate with MAPD or the building department or who to figure out a solution, correct?
Based on the layout and where I think the property line probably is to put a 3-foot berm in, probably have to be meeting with Public Works to talk about a use of street. I don't know how much land there is between the curb line of the drive area and their property line. I've seen plans that maybe there's none. I've also seen where maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 feet. I don't know for certain, but I'm sure a 3-foot berm adequately constructed on this parcel 6B, not 6A, because that berm still exists, but on 6B, it's probably going to be on public property, or at least part of it would be.
But a solution would be found to deal with the issues that have been created by the design of this building and its site, in spite of the fact that there's a big honking berm in front of it when they first bought the land.
That much is true, and there's, as again, there's still the berm on 6A. Your statement's correct, assuming Public Works would allow them to use the city right-of-way in some way. If not, then they're going to be restricted to whatever the width of their property is.
Thank you.
And I guess I kind of go back to the plan was approved by MABCD to build it the way they did
Okay, we got it.
for connection both north and south. So
Let's vote on the substitute motion. Let's do a roll call. Yes.
Bill Johnson.
Yes.
McKay.
Yes.
Green.
yes,
Blick.
No.
Nix.
Yes.
Foster.
No.
Warren.
Yes.
Joe Johnson.
Yes.
Miles.
No.
Hartman.
No.
Cunningham.
No.
I have 5 noes and 6 yeses.
So the substitute motion passes. Thank you. That was a tough case. I agree with what was comments were made because I can remember when we went around and around about the berm. But here a building's complete, it's got a building permit, inspections. It's hard for me to say no, so I mean,
Just point of order, do we need findings for the substitute motion?
Yes.
well, I attempted to. but on item, and I think I addressed it, that to the extent that it's going to be detrimental to affect neighbor or nearby properties, number 3, that I gave examples of both north and south where they don't have the berm at all, and it's not going to be affecting nearby properties that are developed north and south of this property. They are going to have right-of-way, or they are going to be required to have landscaping, that will meet or exceed the landscaping requirement for limited commercial.
Okay. Next item. Philip, you got to help me. Did we need to do 4.6?
Yes, sir.
Or is there just a clarification on that?
No, I believe the applicant has, or the agent representing the applicant has 2 points of conflict with the staff report. I'll go ahead and do a relatively abbreviated, since there wasn't any, I don't believe there's been any public comment. I guess we'll find out, but we should probably treat this as a normal case. I'll make a presentation and we'll go forward from there. So item 4.6 is PUD 2209, which is located on the southwest corner of West Maple and South Meridian at 301 South Meridian. It was the former Metro Meridian High School. It is now home, excuse me, now home to the Muse Meridian Center. The applicant is requesting a zone change from neighborhood retail and limited commercial to planned unit development for custom zoning. The applicant plans to expand the existing music school component including the ability to host live musical events. The applicant is proposing to allow new uses on the site, including community assembly. And I'll take a moment for clarification here. With discussion with the applicant, the need for quote-unquote nightclub in the city has been deemed not necessary. The applicant does not intend to provide any alcohol on site, no sales, no provision of it, zero alcohol, which no longer needs a nightclub in the city definition. It can move forward as event center and or entertainment establishment. So we'll just make that clear of there's no alcohol provision at all. And so any discussion of nightclub in the city is not needed to be included in there. And so that the entertainment establishment will allow them to have the live music that's considered entertainment by the city code. And so because of that, they would have needed to have a conditional use based on its location to residential zoning. They went ahead and went the route of zoning to PUD to give them some more flexibility given the unique nature of what the center does and what they are looking to do with it. Maximum building number is 3. The height shall be in accordance with the neighborhood retail zoning district, which is what it's currently zoned. There are 20-foot setbacks on the north and east sides of parcel 1. And then on the south side of parcel 1 is a 15-foot setback and a 0-foot setback on the east side of parcel 1, which is along Meridian Avenue. One of the points of contention is the applicant is proposing hours of operation from which the entertainment would have to cease. Their proposal was 11 p.m. Sunday through Wednesday and 2 a.m. Thursday through Saturday. Staff recommendation is 9 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 11 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. One of the other points of contention that the applicant is not in agreement with staff recommendation is staff is recommending that these events not be allowed to be outside, to prohibit all outdoor entertainment, and that it be all held inside the building. And so that's one of the points of contention. Quick review of what's surrounding the property. You can see there's a lot of residential zoning around the property, TF3 to the northwest and south, in addition to MF 29 on the west. All of it is developed with single-family homes. You do have limited commercial on the north, that is a tire shop, and you have limited commercial on the east and the northeast, which are also commercial uses as well. Overall, staff is recommending approval of the zone change. The Community Investments Plan identifies the site as appropriate for commercial development, which calls for convenience retail, restaurants, small offices, personal care services, and things that could be located close to and potentially mixed with residential uses. Places for People Plan, this is in alignment with strategy number 3, which improves the economic feasibility of commercial and services and the markets necessary to support them. It's an area of opportunity, which this would provide strategic investment in the area, which is what an area of opportunity is defined as, areas that need strategic investment in order to bolster their vitality. The conditions of approval are, it would just be substantial conformance to the PUD text. All of these things, such as whatever the hours of operations are, whether or not there can and can't be outdoor entertainment, would be provided in the PUD text. So whatever language is approved today, that is part of the condition of approval. There's no supplemental conditions related to these things. It's whether or not what we're recommending as the approved text for the PUD. Couple clarification points just for the record with things that were in the staff report. There was a couple of mentions in the findings regarding the nightclub use as well as the provision of alcohol. Again, just for clarification, there's no provision of alcohol, and the nightclub in the city use is not intended and is not going to be part of the approved language of the PUD because they don't need that level of use because they're not providing any alcohol. This was Matt Williams' case, who's the former planner. I spoke with him prior to the Planning Commission meeting today, and he said that he has not received any public comments from surrounding property owners. And if you'd like, we can just go through pictures real quick on the site, and we'll stand for any questions or hand it over to the applicant after that. There's the existing school building on the site. Next picture. You can see it's for commercial development by the comprehensive plan. Next picture, this is their, it's all just one parcel. Next picture. This is looking from Richmond. On the back side of the school, Richmond is a local street. It does provide on-street parking. Next picture. This is looking south from Maple. Next picture. This is looking at the front of the building from Meridian, looking west. Next picture. This is looking to the north at the house across the street on Maple. Next picture. This is looking to the house that is south of it. We're on Richmond Street looking east at the house that is directly south. Next picture. These are houses across Meridian, or I mean across Richmond to the west. Next picture. And that is that. I can stand for any questions.
Any questions of staff? I guess not, Philip. Applicant or agent, please.
Good afternoon, Phil Meyer with Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. I know it's been a long afternoon, so I'll try to be brief. I'm just going to jump straight to the chase, and I'm going to go to staff recommendations that is on page 7 of your report. So on item 4, we have absolutely no issue or are in support of changing the language to entertainment establishment and event center. That gets us what we want to do. What we're opposed to is the time changes. We would like it approved with the times that we first submitted it with. And we do want to maintain the right to do this outdoors. The general provision 7, staff's recommendation, we're perfectly fine with that. So our 2 issues are the timing, indoor, outdoor. This is a repurpose of an old school building. We did this in 2017, so we've got 5 years. We've been on site with this project. You can rent a room in there. So there's a daycare facility there. There's a couple activities for kids that go on in a room that rent it. Some artist rent rooms. So you can paint in there, you can do clay, and you also get music. So we got music teachers in there. Part of what they're looking to, and that music teacher is not just youth, but it is youth and it's adults, and I can go take music lessons if I want. They do want to be able to have the right to do outdoor facilities, outdoor little concerts or performances. This isn't the Wave. This isn't going to be a rock concert with 300 people sitting in the grass. This is just a small event for the kids. So on the outdoors, if Planning Commission is willing to compromise that, I think if we limit that to the east side of the building and north of the parking lot, which is about a 90-foot buffer from the residences to the south, you know, if you look at the diagram up there, that might be a compromise if you're willing. But the applicant would really like this approved with the timeframes we submitted it with and with the outdoor availability. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any
you may
questions?
have.
Applicant?
I got one. Philip, would they be willing to restrict it just to the operations of the building and not any outside people coming in and using it for music entertainment?
You're gonna have to ask me that again, please.
Would they be willing to accept the use of the outdoor entertainment just for the use of them privately and no other outside people coming in and using it for a concert?
Well, it is for somebody that is renting a space there, so you're not going to go rent the right to do an outdoor concert unless you're one of the residents, you know, or one of the lessees inside the building. So I couldn't just decide I want to go do a little musical and go outside, but the people operating in the building want the ability to be able to go outside.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Restrict it to people that in the building.
That's fine.
Mr. Green?
The hours of operation, what's the concern with that? I guess I'm trying to figure out 2 a.m. What's?
I know. I don't know that I have a great answer for you on that, but this facility is used 24/7 now. I mean, there are people that rent those artists to keep different hours, and there are people in there anytime in those studios. So I think that's kind of why they're wanting the longer time frame. I mean, if you work at Boeing and you want to have a spot to go do your clay pottery, you can go in there. If you got second shift, you can roll in there after that and do that. So that activity's happening all the time indoors.
Oh, okay, so the hours of operation are not for the outdoor
That's for,
piece of that. This is for the indoor piece of it, because it kind of runs together that the
That
hours
would
of
need-
operation,
that would
you're gonna have little
that would need
musicals outside at
clarification,
2 a.m.
I hear you. That would need clarification.
Yeah,
And I don't know if staff's intent was it be outdoors. We didn't clarify it very well when we submitted it with our hours of operation, so.
yeah. Because I don't have any problem if somebody wants to go in there at 2 a.m. and, you know,
You'd be talking just community.
make a pot,
Yeah,
you know. I just don't want somebody at 2 a.m. to go outside and
start
think
a
they can play
concert.
their bagpipe, you know.
So, I understand.
Yeah, Commissioner Green, I've been in this building and I think they're already doing that type of stuff 24/7. I guess I'd wonder about the later hours if in fact they're just wanting this for an occasional kids concert outside, why the hours would need to be at till 11 o'clock at night, because I think most kids are probably in bed way before that.
Hope so.
Any other questions of the agent?
I
Thank
do
you,
think
Mr.
you have a
Myers.
couple. I do think you have a couple neighbors.
Anyone else here to speak on this item? Please come forward and give us your name and address. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name's Randall Hubert. I'm president of James B. Wood LLC. We're a landlord in that area. We've got duplex. We've got 2 tenants, one who's in his 50s, another who's in 60s. Our initial concern was basically loud music late at night, whether there was going to be a sale of alcohol, inebriated persons coming and going from there. as I said, I think we are in, like the recommended text that you have on page 5 that the staff recommended on the hours. And if I understand it right, when he says they can't provide alcohol, is he basically saying sale? But I guess our question is whether it was going to be an event for like a wedding venue or something where people bring their own alcohol in and you have a ton of people coming and going that are inebriated, walking to and from the neighborhood. So those were our concerns. We like the changes to the hours with 11 p.m. on weekdays, or the 9 p.m. on weekdays, 11 on Friday, Saturday, and the no alcohol. And
Not the owner. He's not the owner, is he?
and then the other concern was whether there was going to be, like a band playing, at loud music, rock music or something during weekdays and so forth. So we're supportive of the staff recommendations, and we just wanted to make those comments.
How close is your properties to
We're at 505 and 507 South Meridian, so there's one single-family resident right next to the school on the south, and then our duplex is right next to that.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Any questions of the speaker? Thank you, sir. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll have the rebuttal.
I don't have a long rebuttal. We had a conversation with the applicant, the owner of this, when the staff report came out. They asked us to please ask Planning Commission to approve this and submit it. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna ask Planning Commission to approve it. The time frame is submitted. We're good with the other changes that we talked about.
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got one. Can we split the baby? By that, I mean, can we have the hours of operation outdoors as staff has presented it, but have the hours of operation indoors the way the applicant has requested? Mr. Zevenberger?
If I can make a clarification, staff's recommendation for hours of operation were related to outdoor entertainment events. We didn't have any concern over any use inside the building. It was more if you're going to have concerts or entertainment things in association with it, and those would be outdoors. We did not want those. We didn't want those outdoors, and I guess we had to clarify on, I guess we didn't want to have outdoors. We were going to have the entertainment hours of operation to be limited. So if they were going to have a concert inside, those were the hours of operation that we were looking to limit, not the uses inside, just like a concert. So you're going to have an event where they might be providing the concert indoors was what we were looking to limit with the hours of operation, have no outdoor entertainment events at all.
Any other questions of the agent?
I guess there's an auditorium at this school or not?
You know, I've been in there. I can't answer that. I walked through the hallways, but I didn't start opening all the doors because I just didn't open any of the doors to look.
I think there's a gymnasium at one end.
It's a gymnasium.
Any other questions of the agent?
So, Philip, the hours of, staff has issues with concerts indoors, or they don't? After a certain time?
After a certain time of night. Our concern was concerts outdoors.
It was concerts outdoors?
We wanted to prohibit outdoor entertainment, and the clarification needs to go into the language about indoor entertainment versus the hours of operation of the entire place, understanding that not everything they do is going to be a nuisance at 2:00 in the morning. We were concerned about possible, knowing if you ever go somewhere where there's a concert, you can potentially hear it outside as well as the amount of traffic or things that might be produced by a special event like a concert, even if it's held indoors, you know, the effects of that on the neighborhood coming out at 2:00 in the morning on a Thursday.
You also, on page 5, say events associated with the entertainment establishment and/or event center are not permitted outdoors. So you're saying staff wanted no outdoor
Correct.
anything?
No outdoor entertainment, yeah. So while we're talking about things on page 5, there's a couple clarifications that we need to make here on, and these are things J.R. Cox mentioned to me. On item number 4, we talk about having compliance with section 3D6W. They will need to be in compliance with that with one exception. That requires a 200-foot separation from residential, so we would need to accept that distance and allow it to be within 200 feet of residential. So that's one, just kind of making the sausage of the bench of, we're fine with it, just the way it's written right now, just an exception to that, to allow that. And then the way it's written of alcohol sales are prohibited, knowing their intention is not to have alcohol at all, change that to just alcohol is not permitted on site.
On site?
Right, alcohol is not permitted on site. Their intention is not to have alcohol, but that would take care of the fact that if somebody rents out a space and it's an event, that they don't just cater it and provide free alcohol to somebody. They intend to have no alcohol on the premises. So instead of mentioning it as alcohol sales are prohibited, just saying alcohol is prohibited on site.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the board?
I just want to make a comment. So I can't vote in favor of having any outside events as close as this is to a neighborhood. You all may not recall, but several years ago, we approved an event center out in the county on less than an acre of land. And I have been out to visit the neighbor several times who has been living in his home for 20 years and can no longer enjoy his home because of the music that comes from that event center every single weekend. I also live down the street a half a block from a neighbor in my neighborhood that likes to play his stereo really loud till all hours of the night. I don't think that the residents, the people that live in the residences around this area, around this meridian, whatever we call it, I don't think that we need to ask them to give up their rights to have quiet in the evenings so this place can have concerts on an ongoing basis outside. I think that's an injustice for us to ask them to accept that in their homes. So for that reason, I can't support this.
I got a question for staff. Is this a Delano Neighborhood Association?
This is west of Meridian, so it's outside of Delano.
Is that Sunflower? Sunflower
I
Neighborhood
don't
Association?
know off the top of my head.
Did they call or voice
My
their
understanding
opinion?
from Matt, who developed this case, when I reached out to him and said, have you heard any public comments? He said he had heard none.
How close is it to Kellogg?
About a half a mile?
Maple, it's on Maple.
Less than a half a mile.
Yeah, less than a half mile. And it's a quarter mile to Friends University.
Move to approve for staff comment.
So revised staff comments with the
What she's mentioning
With
is
Alcohol on site.
the
alcohol is not permitted on site.
the alcohol not permitted on site and the exception to the 200-foot
200-foot.
rule.
Okay, so that was your motion too. Second.
Is that with or without allowing outside events?
Staff recommendation prohibited outdoor events.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we got a motion by Mr. Warren.
I'll second that motion.
Well, you'll have to third it.
That'll be the third one.
I got there ahead of you,
Okay,
Cindy.
fine.
Second by Mrs. Foster.
You got 2 seconds.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?
Aye. McKay and I.
So just so that I'm clear, because I am a little slow, there are 2 nays, 9 ayes.
Aye.
Correct.
Thank you.
Next item is 4.7, and I've got to abstain from this item. And since Ms. Fox is not here, I'm going to appoint Ms. Foster to
Mr. Chairman,
this case.
I have to leave at 4:30. If we can't get through this by 4:30, I won't be here for the vote, so. Jeff, what?
Mr. Johnson, just to be, since you're abstaining, I know this is highly technical, but would somebody else appoint who would serve? We don't have in the bylaws a scenario where the chairman recuses himself, the vice chair is absent. So we don't know what to do with that, but since you are recusing yourself, if somebody else would nominate whom you wish to chair this one case, that would be great. And that would need to be by motion in a second.
I'll nominate Deb, I think.
Jeff,
Bill's
could
already talked
you
to
give a explanation? I have to leave at 4:30, and it's 4 o'clock, it's a little after 4 right now. If we can't get through the whole thing, I don't want to have it, make comments or say anything that might influence what everybody else is going to be, because I won't be here to vote.
We'll still have a quorum, but it's up to you whether you want to, if you have to leave before the vote, we'll still have a quorum.
Okay, that's fine, I'll stay here then.
I second Mr. Hartman's motion. I guess we could have the chair in here conducting the meeting until.
Here, let's have a vote on the
favor?
motion.
All in favor,
All in
say
favor,
aye.
say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous.
Okay. Philip, proceed, please.
Zone 2022-25 with CUP 2217 is a zone change from single-family residential to general office with an amendment to the Riverbend Shopping Center Community Unit Plan, DP 18, to permit warehouse self-storage on parcel 4. This property, as you can see, is located about a block north of West 21st Street and about a half mile east of West or North Amidon. The entire community unit plan is the limited commercial area, which is, the total community unit plan is 5.4 acres. Most of it is this LC zone property right off of 21st Street, and then those are parcels 1 through 3, and then this is parcel 4. If you want to go to the aerial shot, the community unit plan itself, this is the Thai Ben Market, Asian grocery store, if you're familiar with the area. The rest of the community unit plan has some restaurants, a bingo hall, and some retail. This has been a parking lot ever since this property was developed. It was developed prior to the community plan existing and received a variance or a special use permit back then to allow a parking lot in single-family residential zoning. It was later absorbed by the community unit plan with language saying that it in no way can satisfy the parking requirements for parcels 1 through 3. So therefore, they didn't absorb it to give themselves their parking requirement. They absorbed it as just an extra parking lot. And if you look through historical photographs, you can pretty much realize it's really never been used. If you've ever been to the site, and you can even see in the aerial, it is in a fair amount of disrepair. So the applicant is looking to redevelop it for warehouse self-storage. In general office zoning, warehouse self-storage is subject to Section 3D6Y of the Unified Zoning Code with the supplementary use regulations. These regulations would apply in the community unit plan language. For those of you who were involved in the subdivision committee last week, you're aware of this, but it was the vacation case that was withdrawn from today. They were requesting to vacate the portion of West 22nd Street between Garland and Hood. They didn't receive a fairly favorable recommendation from the subdivision committee, and they chose to withdraw it. So that is no longer on the table. West 22nd Street at this point is not going to be vacated. In lieu of that, 2 of the supplementary use regulations are on the table to be asked as a waiver. Regulation number 1 requires that if the warehouse self-storage is located in general office zoning, that it needs to be contiguous to a less restrictive, or you could say a more intense zoning classification. Contiguous does not mean across the street from. And so with West 22nd Street remaining as a right-of-way, if this were to be approved, in order to be in compliance with the zoning code, general provision 1 or regulation 1 would have to be waived. In like manner, regulation number 2 requires that this use be contiguous to an arterial street. If West 22nd Street had been vacated, you would then have private property from where this parcel 4 is all the way through the rest of the CUP down to West 21st Street, which is an arterial street, therefore would be vis-a-vis contiguous with an arterial street. Without West 22nd Street being vacated, in order to stay in compliance with the zoning code, they are asking for a waiver of this regulation as well. The final waiver that's in your staff report, the applicant is requesting the waiver of it. Staff is not recommending the waiver of it. It is a waiver of the requirement to have a resident manager, resident meaning they live on the site, so there's a 24-hour presence. The purpose for staff's recommending against this waiver is based on the residential nature surrounding the property. The idea of a resident manager is providing a little bit higher level of security presence. There's somebody there all the time, and not just somebody who's adjacent or somebody who would have to come in if an incident happens in the middle of the night. There is a resident person providing security, or at least available if an incident were to go down. And so given the residential character, and the fact that, it is, in a sense, putting general office zoning a little bit further into the residential area, we are looking to have the resident manager be on site and that regulation be upheld as the zoning code writes it. The site plan, staff is recommending a revised site plan to include what's required for parking as it's discussed in your staff report, in addition to the landscaping that is required. Speaking of landscaping, the CUP does not address landscaping for parcel 4, partly because it was a parking lot in residential zoning. It did address landscaping and screening requirements for the rest of the CUP. And upon review, staff realized that one of them has never been satisfied, which can constitute a violation of the CUP. And that is the first bullet point at the bottom of page 2, talking about a minimum of a 10-foot planting strip being installed along Somerset, which is the street on the west side of the community unit plan, along 22nd Street, as well as along Hood Avenue, which is on the east side of the community unit plan. Going out there in person and even seeing on aerial photographs, there's grass, but doesn't look like there was ever any evidence of an actual planting landscape strip that was 10 feet deep ever been planted. And so one of the conditions of approval is that the landscaping requirements of the entire CUP be satisfied prior to the issuance of building permits for the warehouse self-storage on parcel 4, if this is recommended for approval. The other 2 points that are talked about in your staff report, those are in place or those are satisfied. So for the sake of time, I won't go into those. Regarding screening and landscaping for the warehouse self-storage itself on parcel 4, the supplemental use regulations require a minimum of a 15-foot landscape yard, which in this case would be along the east, north, and west property lines because they abut or are across the street from residential zoning. Architectural semi-solid screening fence or the face of the structures as designed to screen the use from the residential uses. Looking at the proposed site plan, the applicant is intending to use the back of the building, so you're not going to have any overhead doors. The back of the buildings to satisfy the screening requirement. They're going to be required to provide architectural renderings to the planning department for review and approval, in addition to the revised site plan showing the landscaping and the final layout of the buildings for us to determine that the screening and landscaping requirements are met. As we kind of discussed before, properties surrounding this are mostly residential except for the community unit plan to the south. The comprehensive plan identifies the areas appropriate for residential development. However, the locational guidelines talk about using certain uses of either higher density residential or lower intensity commercial uses to buffer higher intensity commercial uses from lower density residential. Warehouse self-storage has commonly been identified as one of those types of buffer uses. So we feel that this is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. With the Wichita Places for People plan, this aligns with strategy number 6, encouraging infill redevelopment that is contextual to the environment, as well as it being an area of opportunity. This will provide an opportunity for reinvestment in the area. The final plan that governs this is the 21st Street North Corridor Revitalization Plan that would primarily focus on commercial development along 21st Street, as well as a transportation plan for the corridor. One of the goals in the future land use map identify this area within the plan. Goal number 1 talks about increasing the long-term economic renewal, vitality, and sustainability on 21st Street. This is only 1 block north and can contribute to the economic vitality of 21st Street, knowing it's connected to the community unit plan that does front 21st Street. And finally, the future land use map of that plan identifies this as appropriate for infill development. It's been a parking lot since the 60s and has never been used and could be a prime opportunity for infill development. Staff is recommending approval, subject to the recommended language in your staff report. Again, we're okay with the 2 waivers regarding making it in compliance with the zoning code related to being contiguous to a more intensive zoning and contiguous to an arterial street. However, staff is not recommending that the regulation number 17 be waived. We are recommending that a resident manager be on site as the zoning code requires. As I mentioned before, revised site plan and architectural designs are required. We're asking that the applicant install a sidewalk along Hood, along the east side of the CUP. There is a sidewalk that goes from 22nd Street along Hood down to 21st Street. This would increase some pedestrian connectivity in the neighborhood to the south, at least for the boundary of the CUP along Hood. On 21st Street, there is Wichita Transit bus stops and would allow for an opportunity to increase some pedestrian connectivity in the area. And as I mentioned before, the applicant will be required to install the landscaping on parcel 1 as the community unit plan general provision 8 requires. I have heard, in your staff report, you had 1 letter that I received in the mail from a resident. Other than that, I have not heard specific public comment about the warehouse self-storage use. I know there have been some public comment regarding the possible vacation of West 22nd Street. I do understand that there's a gentleman here in the audience who would likely want to speak on this. If we want to jump ahead to the site photos. So if we go through these maps and just jump ahead to the site photos, we'll give you a visual. This is looking north at parcel 4. I'm standing on the backside of the shopping center. You can see that you pretty much have to mow the parking lot based on its use. Next picture. This is looking to the northeast. These are the houses that are across the street from Hood from this property. Next picture. This is looking to the southeast. These are houses that are across the street from the parcel 1, the Thai Bend Market. Next picture. This is looking south from parcel 4 to the backside of the Thai Bend Market. This is one of the required screening that actually was installed per the community unit plan. The planting strip would have been over here, and there was no evidence that one ever was or was just never maintained. Next picture. This is on the parking lot itself, getting a closer view on houses on Garland. Next picture. This is looking north from 21st Street at the Thai Bend Market. This is parcel 1. So this parking lot is on the other side of it as you're looking north. Next picture. Again, we're on parcel 1 and we're looking to the west. Next picture. This is looking to the east. That's the Bingo Hall. 21st Street is off to the right here. Next picture. I can stand for any staff questions.
Any questions for staff?
I got a question. I know a lot of the storage units, they usually have some guttering system that they use for in the parking lot for stormwater runoff. Through your photos, and I know this question might be hard for you, through these photos, I did not see any drainage on 22nd Street or on Hood Avenue. I don't know if you know if there is any drainage or how would they connect into that, or with all that storm water runoff with having a paved area in that area.
Right.
I think I'll defer to the agent on it. I'm sure they have discussed it and would likely be something that would be needed to be part of their construction plans for submittal.
Okay.
I know it depends on the one thing I do know about stormwater is if they're, it all depends on how much land you're disturbing and whether or not, and what the city requires about stormwater permitting, and if they make the determination on whether or not you can be allowed to put the stormwater in the street, or if you actually have to hook into the stormwater system, but I'll let the agent address that.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Green?
We didn't hear the case or didn't vote on the case for the 22nd Street vacation. They withdrew that, is that correct?
That is correct. They withdrew it, so that vacation is basically null. They're not pursuing to vacate it anymore.
And which then poses the question, since 22nd Street is not going to be vacated, how are we going to have connection to an arterial? I have major concerns of the storage area not being contiguous with a lot that they can go through to have access to an arterial. I think the last thing people want to see is storage centers popping up in, this isn't residential all the way around, but it is residential on three sides with no access to an arterial.
That's where those waivers would have to be approved.
I understand, but with 22nd Street not even going to be considered, not going to be considered for vacation, I was kind of surprised that we were seeing this, simply because 22nd Street didn't get vacated. So I understand the waivers, though.
Are there any other questions for staff? Anyone virtual have any questions for staff? All right, thank you, Philip. Is the agent or applicant here? You know the drill, sir.
Kirk Miller, K. Miller Engineering, I'm the agent. And with our subdivision meeting last week, there was some concerns from the neighbors about public safety, and as far as the truck dock over on the west end and blocking that road, blocking 22nd Street. So if we went through with the vacation of 22nd Street and there were those issues, then we've created an issue where they would not have access off of Garland out of the neighborhood, which is why we decided that the staff had kind of indicated that they would recommend the waiver that we're asking for in lieu of vacating that street because of those issues. So that's why we withdrew the case for the zoning, or not for the zoning, but for the vacation, is because we're just trying to be good neighbors out here with them. And, when they're pretty adamant about wanting that second access out there, that we decided to go ahead and do that and go for the waiver. The one waiver we do want that is being denied by staff is the on-site resident. And the owner of this offices in the CUP, and he's there virtually all the time. He has other storage units also where he knows how to run storage units. This isn't a one-time project for him. So we would like to waive that because he knows what happens in the, after hours and that type of thing, and I think he's set up to handle all that. And nowadays, when you look at it, this is a small parcel also. There wouldn't be that much storage on it. It's only about 2 acres, or it's less than 2 acres actually. So the smaller the site, the less demand you might have for an on-site resident. So we'd like to waive that. And you do have storage units out there without on-site residents if you're zoned where it's not a conditional use, where if you're zoned general commercial or something like that, you don't have to have an on-site resident. So it's not a requirement for all self-storage units. But other than that, we are fine with the staff comments. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for the agent? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Miller.
Okay.
Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this case? Please give your name and address, and you have three minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is Leon Salazar. I live at 2358 North Garland, which my property is adjacent to the existing parking lot. I'm just north of the northwest corner. And I would like ask not to approve the zone change, and for several reasons. I know I have 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but one of the main reasons is this storage shed is not going to enhance or help the neighborhood. We're talking about a site where you're going to have people moving in and out. And it could be any hours. There's no hours set. Is this going to be a 24-hour open operation? The other item is obviously it's going to be trash, debris. We're also going to have additional lighting that's going to disturb the neighborhood. So those are the items that I have a concern on. And that's all I have. So I'll make it short and sweet. Have any questions, let me know.
Are there any questions for our member of the public? Hearing none, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Thank you. Name and address in 3 minutes, please.
My name is Nello Ornelas. I live at 2359 North Garland. So on that picture there, my house is the third house on Garland on the south side. So this storage place would take away the natural neighborhood. It would make the family housing a little bit more commercial than what I want it to be. It would take away the peace and quiet. And who wants to hear garage doors opening and closing at whatever time? Vehicles starting up, slamming going on. It looks like they changed the blueprint there and added more storage on this new paper that they just handed us. The storage will bring more traffic. It won't be neighborhood friendly. And I don't think it's going to be for walking and child proof. It's going to bring more commercial. And that's not good for, a residential neighborhood. And this guy never has planted anything for strips, or it's all being weeds, overgrown trees. You can't even walk on 22nd Street where that block wall is. As a matter of fact, the block wall is falling apart right now. So I don't think he's going to do a very good job of taking care of anything here. He hasn't so far. And the letter that Betty wrote, Betty McNew, in the papers, everything she says is true. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I have a question. How long have you lived at that resident for?
I moved, well, when I was a kid, I lived there. And then I left and I came back and I bought the property from my mother since 2017 when I moved back. I think I bought it in April of 2018.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And one more, just let me put one more thing. There used to be 2 houses on that property back in the 60s.
I was just going to ask you if you'd seen anything other than a parking lot.
No, there used to be 2 houses.
Yeah.
Because I used to know the people, the kids that lived there. So, thank you very much.
Are there any other members of the public here in chambers who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, are there any members of the public virtually who would like to speak on this item? Hearing none, would the agent care to rebut?
One thing I didn't mention, there was a question about drainage. There is inlets right there on the corner of 22nd.
Gotcha.
They showed up in one of the earlier pictures.
Okay.
But, storage units aren't that big of traffic generators. They're, you go there, it's not like you go there every day. You go there whenever you need something. So you probably wouldn't get any more traffic. You probably have less traffic than if that was multifamily housing or even single-family housing for that point. But, it's been vacant for, houses in the 60s, so it's been vacant 50-plus years. So, you want to bring up the tax base by doing infill projects, and that's kind of what this is, so. Be glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
How tall are the buildings?
Okay.
Did you want to comment on his observation on the condition of the property?
On the
What it looks like right now?
the upkeep, as far as this parcel, the asphalt's so old and cracked, they may need to mow it, but with everything that's growing through it, the maintenance, this is a zoning case, so, there's nothing that says the ownership couldn't change along the lines too. But as far as the quality of his upkeep, I could not answer that question.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr.
I think
Chair.
Joe did.
How tall are the buildings?
How tall do the storage unit buildings be? We don't have a design for them yet, but I think they'll probably be the, standard, 12-footers or so? 10 to 12, I would guess. We don't have a design, and as I pointed out, our site plan layout's going to have to also change because we're going to put landscaping in there, and there's actually a sewer line that runs right through the middle of it, so I have to give an easement for that, and we'd have to have the buildings offset on either side of that. So there's work to be done if this passes and it can become storage units.
I was going to ask you that question. You said this would be a small lot, and I counted 164 units, and so I was like, well, what's a large unit? But
I counted 196, so.
Which is probably a little ambitious when you start looking at how much we have to offset. I mean, I didn't do the drawing, and I don't know how big those units are. The way they're drawn, they may only be 4 feet wide or something too.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for Mr. Miller? Virtual commissioners care to ask any more questions? All right, I think now we're done.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
All right, back to the commission for discussion. Comments?
I've got a comment. I think in this situation, I would agree with the staff as far as having an on-site person there. I just think that just makes more sense. And as far as the neighbors go, I think that would give them some sense of security. So I would approve it subject to staff comments.
All right, can we continue discussion?
Sure.
Because I have something I would like to say. If we need to do 3 waivers, if we do with the application once, in order to have a storage unit here, maybe this isn't the right place for a storage unit. I know staff has said it could be a buffer, but it's got residential on 3 sides, and I don't think it's buffering much of anything. It's protruding into a residential neighborhood. So I'm inclined to deny the application myself.
I appreciate that. I would be much more comfortable if 22nd had been vacated and we had that direct access to an arterial. I have no qualms whatsoever with this being a storage facility. I know that they would have to meet the landscaping and the buffering and all of that, the walls, and either that or buildings would be considered the walls. But with no connection directly to, contiguous to 21st Street, I wouldn't be able to support a motion to approve.
Are there any other comments from committee members, commission members? I would note for the minutes that Mr. McKay left presentation, so he will not be part of the vote on this.
We had a motion?
Have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move we approve subject to staff comments.
Second?
Oh, dear.
Hartman? Mr. Hartman.
Mr. Hartman, and a second from Mr. Warren to approve per staff comments. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
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 I think you need to have a roll call.
We have a roll call, please.
Yes, you certainly may. Green,
Nay.
Blick,
Nay.
Nix. Foster,
No.
Warren,
Aye.
Joe Johnson,
Aye.
Miles,
Aye.
Hartman,
Aye.
Cunningham.
No.
I have 5 noes and 4 yays.
So it fails.
Fails,
The
correct?
motion fails.
All right, it's late. All right, so, would anyone care to make an alternative motion? Can we do that? Can we do that?
I think it's cleaner if knowing,
Yeah.
like
Have a
we all
positive response one way or the
intuitively
other.
know what you're getting at, but to actually do a, for example, to do a motion to deny.
Yeah.
This motion just failed, so it didn't get approved. I think it's cleaner for the record legally to
To deny.
move to deny.
Move we
And we
deny.
would likely need to have alternate findings since staff recommendation was approval. A motion to deny would need alternate findings stated.
I move we deny, and the reason for the denial is there is no direct connection to an arterial, which is required. We're waiving that.
Second.
Mr. Green and a second from Mr. Blick to deny.
I think a roll call would be.
Any discussion on the motion? Shall we just go ahead and do a roll call on that one as well?
We shall.
Thank you.
Green,
Aye.
Blick,
Aye.
Nix. Foster,
Aye.
Warren,
Aye.
Joe Johnson,
Nay.
Miles,
Nay.
Hartman,
Nay.
Cunningham. Cunningham,
I'm sorry. Aye. I'm sorry. Aye.
So,
I have 5 ayes and 4 nays,
and one abstention.
and of course, 1 abstention.
Okay, motion to deny moves forward.
Passes. Thank you. Shall we call Mr. Johnson back for the next item on the agenda, which is,
Move that we terminate your role as chair. No.
yeah, that too. 4.8.
No.
Back to you, sir. I've been terminated.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Christina Reith, Associate Planner, happy to give Philip a break here from the podium. This is case number zone 2022-00026. The applicant is Tim Chad from Napa Adventures LLC, and the agent is Bob Armstrong. The parcel in question is currently zoned SF5, single-family residential, and they are requesting to change it to TF3, two-family residential. The lot, or the parcel, is located on 11.8 acres and is generally located on the south side of West Pawnee Avenue and 1/4 mile east of 135th Street West. And they're proposing to allow duplexes to be built on the property, and the staff is recommending to approve it. So if we look at the land use map here, as you can see, it's mostly SF5 single-family residential that surrounds the property. However, if you look in the upper left-hand corner, there is some TF3, there are some duplexes there, and TF3 also permits construction of single-family dwellings in addition to duplexes. And the reason that we are approving this application is that the requested zoning aligns with the goals of the community investment plan. The map identifies the area in which the site is located to be primarily appropriate for residential uses and defines the residential uses as a variety of housing types, which include duplexes. If we want to go to the next slide, please. So there's the property in question, and it's abutting some single-family residential. Next picture. As you can see, it's the future growth concept map shows it is zoned for or projected for new residential, which includes single-family housing and duplexes. Next picture. And this is a picture looking north at the site. It's currently undeveloped farmland. There's a lot of, or undeveloped land, I should say. There's a lot of undeveloped land in the area because it is right on the Sedgwick County border. Next picture. Here's another looking south towards the site. Next picture. And here's one looking north away from the site at some of the single-family homes in the area. Next picture. And another shot looking northeast away from the site at some nearby single-family homes. And next picture. Just more single-family homes. I did receive some comments that I passed out to you guys before the presentation, and these are from some of the property owners who received the notification. And some of their concerns are the increase in traffic, since there will be 2 times the amount of homes as originally planned. There's concerns about the nearby public schools. They're already at capacity as they sit today. And let's see, adding further density through zoning change, it might negatively impact the safety of the road for all users. I think one of the people brought up a good idea or a good point that the missing turn lane presents hazards with the drivers that already exceed the speed limit due to the decreased speed limit. On Pawnee, it goes from 55 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour. And there are also some concerns that it might be for renters as opposed to homeowners. And I will now stand for questions.
Any questions of staff? Yes, not. Thank you. Applicant or agent?
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Chad, 2326 North Lakeway Circle, Wichita, Kansas. I'll be real brief. I'm also a partner in representing the development in this. Our goal is real simple. We're just here to provide quality, affordable housing for the area. The 11 plus minus acres, our goal is obviously to turn into multifamily. The partnership is 2 people. Our goal is to develop the area, build it ourselves, and maintain it. That's provide well systems to the area, sprinkler systems, and for us to maintain that for the development. So final plating has not been done. Preliminary plating has been done, but we needed to get through this process first. So that's really the gist of it, in all honesty. We're just here to develop the area into multifamily. So if I can answer any questions, I'd be more than happy to.
Any questions to the applicant?
I just have a quick question. Over on the south side of that map where it shows the green and has the outline of it, down below there is, it looks like a pond and it comes across the creek, and then I know there's a bridge right there. So is that where the runoff will go into?
Is that where the what, I'm sorry?
Runoff?
Yeah, and the future development for this is a one-way in, one-way out from, this is Southwest Passage neighborhood, and then there's 39 acres that are south of this too. This is a big slough that runs through here for drainage.
Gotcha.
So I'm sure once we get to final plating with engineering, there'll be a specific drainage plan that will all be defined for this area.
Cool, sounds good. And then north of there, I've noticed that there's quite a bit of building that's going over on 135th, it looks like, and.
That is
so,
correct.
Yeah, okay, that's questions I have.
Go ahead.
Sir, I know this question really is probably more in line with when you get to the plating, but do you have an idea, have you got plans developed in terms of what size of units you're planning on going in here and how many garages?
Not specific to that degree yet, but typically, in our history and what we've done in the past is typically to get 3 per acre, 3 units per acre. So are you asking me like 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 car garage?
2 bath, square footage per unit, are they 800 square foot or 1,400 square foot?
It hasn't been specifically defined on that yet. I don't want to tell you one thing and it be another. I have to be transparent and fair. I just don't want to tell you it's going to be 1,150 a side or 2,300 feet when it ends up being 2,400 feet or ends up being 2,000 feet.
Any other questions? The applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this item? Anybody else here to speak on this item? How about somebody virtual?
My name is Justin Five, and I would like to speak on that.
Your name and address?
2401 South Canyon Street. I live in Southwest Passage, which is the neighborhood just adjacent to this. I have some concerns. I did a really good job at summarizing the neighborhood. I'm trying to turn my volume here so I'm not echoing back. So she did a really good job of explaining the summary of our concerns about this. The primarily concern that I have is the fact that originally this neighborhood in question was to be the second edition of Southwest Passage. And so it was the single-family homes, like-minded, fit and finish. And with this proposal, since these streets are interconnected, the homeowners, especially the ones right adjacent to this neighborhood, are going to experience decreased property value, increased traffic, as we're going to have double the homes that are coming through on those 2 streets. But these aren't going to match. These were done as a package deal. And now, when anybody built their house in this neighborhood, that was always the plan to have this. And with the proposed change, this is going to essentially change the entire return on the people that live in this neighborhood. There is a lot of construction in the area, so traffic is a concern. But I would say the biggest concern of mine has to do with the future ability to sell our house, ability to maintain. When we're already in an area where these homes are a little bit larger than the surrounding areas, we do not have a lot of comps when it comes to matching the property values. And so it's going to be an even more concern and a challenge to sell these homes. Now, if this proposal does go through and goes to the two-family homes, ideally, I would like to see Cowboy Street, which is not labeled on here, but it is the midway street that is now terminated. I would like that street and Red Rock to not continue into this neighborhood. They are not going to be the same style, and at least we would have that break to show us really associated with this two-family home neighborhood. And I understand those are city. Also, this was the original plan, was to have these as single-family homes. The other concerns, Christine, were the traffic, the school systems, being at capacity. So I'll elaborate on that.
Any questions of the speaker? Hearing none, thank you. Is there anybody else virtual to speak on this item? Anybody else virtual want to speak on this item? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to move to approve per staff comments.
Second.
I got a motion by who?
Ms. Foster, and a second. I think that was Ms. Miles.
Ms. Miles, I think. Any discussion?
That was a motion to
You're
approve.
correct.
A
Motion to approve per staff comments, yes.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? 10-0? 9-0. 10-0. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Bill's
We
back.
just lost McKay.
Bill was gone with the 9.
Oh, that's right, you were gone. Yeah, got it.
Philip, any other things we have to do?
I don't believe so.
All right. We're adjourned.